Yes.
The lead Strait Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1570 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news out of Ukraine and a little bit out of the Middle East. But right now we're getting word that Putin is once again threatening to launch an IRBM at a major Ukrainian city this time, and it looks like they might carry it out yet again. We're also seeing that Crimea is under a massive Ukrainian drone assault this evening, and also the Kerch Bridge was apparently under an alert earlier today, and also Iran's attacked several ships near Hormuz right as the peace deal is right around the corner yet again. So it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we've been covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments from inside of Ukraine, throughout the entirety of Eastern Russia, and, actually Western Russia to correct myself there, and also throughout the entirety of the Middle East over the course of the day, although the Middle East has largely just been business as usual. Over the course of the past 24 hours, we have heard that the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian intelligence is starting to get credible information that the Russian Federation is preparing for a strike of an Oreshnik IRBM against Ukrainian state territory at some point here within the imminent future, most likely within the next 18 hours at this point. We are believing that this missile will most likely be fired from the Kapustin Yar testing range just outside of the city of Odevinsk within the Astrakhan Oblast, and that apparently Ukrainian forces and Ukrainian agents on the ground must be seeing indications of preparations to fire an Oreshnik at Ukraine at this very moment in time right now. We've also been able to hear additional statements and reports over the day as well that Russian air defenses and front defenses within Ukraine have largely appeared to have completely collapsed, as it does not appear that any active air defense is being seen through most areas of occupied Ukraine, save for Melitopol, which had some light machine guns involved in their air defense, but outside of that, quite literally no air defense was seen in most parts of the occupied territories, showing that at this moment in time, Russian air defenses are so heavily stretched that the front lines can no longer rely on continuous air coverage by their air defenses on the ground. We've also seen seen significant strikes continue against the M14 highway and also the city of Melitopol. Speaking of which, over the course of the day, both critical parts of the supply line heading to Crimea. In a bit of surprise news, we have been able to hear that the Russians have either repaired the pontoon bridge that had been prior to hit at the Chanhar Gap within the past few days, or have somehow found and deployed a complete replacement pontoon bridge in a very short amount of time. Satellite photography is now showing that there is an active pontoon bridge within the area, and we are seeing that while supplies are able to cross the gap, it is at an extremely slow pace, with only one vehicle allowed on the bridge at one time in either direction, meaning that supplies are generally once again crawling to a near stop within this area, and we've also seen almost no trade or transport activity within the area of Armyansk in the Armyansk bridges. Sevastapol also came under significant attack over the course of this day, with air defense fire being seen near Cape Foylan, just to the south of the city, and we've also been able to confirm some significant damage on the Russian vessel within the port of Sevastopol that is a part of the Russian Navy. We've also been able to see some further updates as well out of the Krasnodar area, that drones did pass by the Kerch Bridge today on their way to attack targets within the Krasnodar Oblast, and additionally, the Ukrainian armed forces have been inflicting significant losses against the Russian Federation's armed forces across the entirety of the front over the course of the whole day. We've also seen that the Russian Federation is now threatening even further critical infrastructure strikes against Ukraine, while we are also seeing that even further air defenses are being relocated into the Moscow city area even as we speak. Near to the area of Nizhny refinery strikes of yesterday night are still burning as of today, and the damage to the refinery appears to be some of the largest that we have seen on the Nizhny refinery during the entirety of the war. We've also been able to hear an interesting development as well, that the Director of National Intelligence of the United States of America has alleged and stated that the state of Ukraine was involved in the operation of biolabs throughout the beginning of the war and before the war started, and stated that there were 30 other countries that were involved in this as well. This has largely been a point of controversy today, and we will be covering that on air, not as one of our top priority pieces of news, but as a lower priority because the statements are completely false and aiming to misrepresent the entirety of the situation, which we will be debunking and covering later on during the show. Additionally, we've also been able to see that within the Middle East, the President of the United States is still stating that a deal is only hours away and that the Iranians have agreed to quite literally everything, and we've also been able to hear on the other side that the Iranians have stated they're not agreeing to a nuclear deal. They want billions of dollars up front. The United States stated that the UAE was going to be giving them billions of dollars, and then the UAE stated that's a complete lie, and the UAE is not giving the Iranians a single dime. We've also been able to see that the Iranians have fired at civilian vessels near to the Strait of Hormuz today, and have also fired attack drones apparently at U.S. forces, which were also shot down as well within the Strait of Hormuz, according to a CENTCOM report. We've also seen some intermittent Hezbollah attacks against northern Israel, and we've also seen that the Iranian negotiating position appears to be completely unchanged, even as of the moment right now. But with all of that in mind, we are going to be getting through all of this news.
Wait. You forgot one huge story that happened right before we went live. The U.S. just conducted airstrikes down in Venezuela just a moment ago, and they took out the leader of the cartel, Tren de Aragua. They just took them out on Venezuelan territory with airstrikes. So that's massive right there. We have the video from that apparently the U.S. military put out, and that literally just happened a moment ago. So that's also huge.
That is actually something that I completely forgot to cover, is that literally right before we went on air, I think it was like 30 minutes before we've just gone live, the U.S. has conducted airstrikes in Southcom's area of responsibility, which has killed the cartel leader of the Tren de Aragua cartel within Venezuela, with actual footage showing the event of the strike and what we believe to be the strike that killed the leader of the Tren de Aragua cartel. So we will be making sure to get into that as well, probably as one of our top priority stories here very soon tonight. Completely forgot about that one in my summary here, folks, because it happened so recently, and I just added it right before we went live. But with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to get on into the major news that we have throughout the day, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And moving us directly on and immediately into our largest stories of the day today, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainians are stating that there is going to be a high likelihood of Oreshnik strikes being conducted within the next 24 hours. According to a statement that was issued today by the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, during the day there's a high probability that the enemy will use a medium-range ballistic missile from the Kapustin Yar test site. Do not ignore air traffic control signals. We also were able to see the original post here in Ukrainian. This is something that is being stated by the Ukrainians as a credible and imminent threat that the Russian Federation is currently posing, that another Oreshnik intermediate range ballistic missile is going to be fired from the Kapustin Yar test range and some sort of a city or critical infrastructure site within the state of Ukraine. The Oreshnik, also called the RS-26 Rubesh in its actual military designation, is an intermediate-range ballistic missile that has been used a large number of times against the state of Ukraine by the Russian Federation, using its warheads for kinetic impact effect, meaning that it is quite literally just the mass of the warheads themselves slamming into the ground that causes any damage, and so the damage is largely minimal. However, the Russian Federation largely conducts these actions not to conduct physical damage, but to try and conduct mental damage on the Ukrainians by putting the fear into them that eventually one of these Oreshnik hypersonic missiles may be equipped with nuclear warheads instead of inert kinetic warheads, and eventually that could end up causing a significant nuclear attack on the state of Ukraine at any moment, and due to that sort of threat or pressure, Ukraine should relent and largely give in to Russia's demands, which is largely unconditional surrender at this point in the war. We did see that during the last Oreshnik strikes that were conducted only a couple of weeks ago, that out of the 2 Oreshniks that were fired, one of them appeared to have failed and had landed inside of the occupied areas of the Donetsk Oblast just north of Donetsk city. That is actually the first time that we've seen a legitimate in-flight failure of an Oreshnik IRBM at any point in the war so far. The other 3 Oreshniks that have been fired at Ukraine did actually impact near to their targets or within the broader area, but we've also been able to hear additional reports that there has been at least 2 other separate incidents where Oreshniks were attempted to be fired, and they apparently had critical failures on the launch pad itself, meaning that the Oreshniks were just rolled off of the pad at Kapustin Yar, inspected, checked, and then possibly attempted to be fired again in the next coming strikes, or put into, I guess you could say, the storage rack for use at a later date if they're ever usable at all. Still, this is a very significant threat that we're currently hearing that the Ukrainian Air Force has credible information to work off of to say that there's a high likelihood that this is going to be happening. And we already know from prior times that the Ukrainian Air Force does have credible information whenever they issue these sorts of warnings, as each and every time they have issued a warning like this, it has come true, usually within the next 48 to 72 hours after the statement's made. So we're generally getting that idea, at least at the moment right now. It is a high likelihood that an Oreshnik is going to be fired sometime tomorrow or the next day after. Specifically from here, by the way, just to show y'all exactly where it's going to be fired from. It's in these larger fields to the northeast of Adabinsk, which you can see right here, and this is what's called the Kapustin Yar testing range. You can actually see some of the areas where they launch in test rockets, like here, for example, where there are these larger splotches in the fields, which they technically call launch pads. I don't think they're launch pads. I think they're literally just little dirt fields that they fire off the missiles from. But nevertheless, this is where it's going to be fired, and we do not know the target inside of Ukraine at the moment right now. That appears to be unknown by the Ukrainians, which is also giving us an idea that whatever intelligence they have been able to gather about the upcoming missile strike, the high likelihood or probability of how they've gathered that information is that either agents on the ground near to the Kapustin Yar test range have just seen one of the RS-26 TELs drive into the Kapustin Yar testing range, showing that they're conducting pre-firing prep, or we might be seeing that there's been word somewhere within the Russian command structure where there is a Ukrainian mole in the Russian armed forces that has stated that there is going to be an Oreshnik strike, and then that mole communicated that back to the Ukrainian SBU, which then told the Ukrainian Air Force, and then the Ukrainian Air Force put out the alert. That's the reason why we're believing at the moment right now that the information isn't out there yet as to what they're going to be attempting to target in Ukraine once the missile is fired. Right now, a lot of people are actually speaking about what they're thinking is going to be the site of the strikes here within the near future. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so I'll be honest, folks. The IRBM threats are starting to get a little bit old because we've seen Russia conduct at least 2 of them on Ukrainian territory over the course of the war. The first one hit somewhere, I believe, in Donetsk, out in the middle of a field somewhere, so it largely didn't hurt any civilians for the most part. And the one that we just saw recently apparently hit a shed in the Kyiv Oblast, and it didn't actually hit any civilians. It didn't hit pretty much anything of note to a large degree. So the IRBM strikes so far have been pretty much empty threats to a large degree. The the Russians will fire them, but they won't really hit anything of note because maybe the missile might be so inaccurate they can't get the thing to actually hit what they want it to hit. That's very possible. But the Russian civilians were very upset that Putin wasted such an expensive missile on hitting a shed. They were very upset by that, and there was a lot of Russian bloggers complaining that Putin was wasting money on it. So now we're hearing that Putin's threatening infrastructure hits on Ukraine over recent attacks that Ukraine keeps conducting on Russian territory, including down in Crimea and the Russian-occupied territories. So what are your thoughts about that? 58% said Putin will likely attack central Kyiv this time around with the IRBM. 26% said it really won't be anything too serious, and 9% said it sounds like a total bluff. And me personally, I'm having a hard time believing that Putin's actually going to launch that IRBM into central Kyiv because that is going to respond, or that's going to cause a reciprocal response on the capital of Moscow inside of Russia. Now, I believe that's probably why we're seeing air defense get put up on the top of buildings, like it's some type of like Barnum and Bailey circus. They're putting up the air defense systems on the top of skyscrapers because they're worried about that. So I'm with the 26%. If they launch an Oreshnik again, it'll probably be a kinetic warhead, meaning it won't be armed with an explosive on board, and it'll probably hit somewhere that's not as significant as, like, let's say, central Kyiv or somewhere like that. So I'm with the 26%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm generally with the 26% as well. I don't think it's going to be anything all too serious. An IRBM strike on Kyiv, the city of Kyiv, is going to lead to reciprocal strikes on the Russian capital of Moscow with Ukrainian drones. And we have already seen that in prior times with the Ukrainians just flying drones into the area of Moscow without any real attempt to actually hit anything. They were able to make it far in, basically towards the Kremlin itself, and fly the drones almost right over the very center of Russian government decision making. So I would say that that's probably unlikely that the Russians would want to open that Pandora's box, because the Ukrainians are going to get a lot more damage out of an FP2 than the Russians are even going to get out of this multi-million-dollar Oreshnik that they're about to fire hypothetically at Kyiv. So if it's going to hit anywhere, it might hit within the Kyiv region. It might actually be a city like Bielotservka, or it might be something near to the city of Kyiv, like for example Brovary, which is just outside of the city, or for example the Boryspil International Airport, to also try and get it as close as possible to Kyiv, but not within the city perimeter of Kyiv, to try and send something of a threat. But I don't really think they're going to be hitting the capital city itself. So I would have to give.
Oh, go ahead. I thought you were rounding out. Go ahead.
I would also have to give the fact that so far we've seen that the Russians have fired and attempted to fire a total of 6 missiles, particularly Oreshnik IRBMs, at the state of Ukraine over the course of the past several years since the first strike in 2023. The first strike landed in Dnipro successfully. The second strike landed south of Lviv, near Mykolaiv, successfully. We then saw that the third strike, which is the one we covered several weeks ago, one missile successfully landed in Bielotservka, and another one failed and was a dud and landed in the occupied areas of Donetsk. And then we also know that in the midst of all those attacks, there were 2 other attempts to fire 2 other Oreshniks, which suffered failures on the pad and did not even launch, leading to a failure to launch, and then that did not turn into an incident. But we still were able to hear of that from Ukrainian defense and Russian murmurs throughout the Russian armed forces. So that means that right now the Russians are shooting a 50-50 chance that the missile will fire and actually make it to where it's supposed to impact. And with those kinds of odds, I think they're not going to try and chance hitting Kyiv, because if it fails and it's clearly on a trajectory to hit Kyiv, and then it lands in a farm field somewhere just southwest of Konotop, that's going to look like an abysmal failure, and it's going to be even more embarrassing for the Russians than if they try to hit somewhere else and then just explain it away that they were basically trying to hit nothing anyways.
Yeah, and also, by the way, we have gone over this generally before, but just to reiterate this one more time, because when the IRBMs come up and the Oreshnik starts being discussed again, a lot of people start worrying, does that mean Russia's going to launch a nuke at Ukraine? That does not necessarily mean a nuke's going to get launched, because the Oreshnik is nuclear capable. It can have a nuclear warhead on board of it, but there's no evidence whatsoever that Russia's ready to take it to the extreme, because that would probably be the last move Russia would make in this war. If they did that, it would probably cause Europe to get involved and probably cause a huge series of escalations that Putin's not really ready to handle right now. So they're probably not going to do that. The last time we've seen it struck inside of Ukraine, it's been simply kinetic warheads, meaning it's empty warheads, and they have the MIRV system. So it's like, multiple different prongs of the warhead hitting down on the ground, but there's nothing actually in it. There's no explosive in the warhead itself. So it just simply impacts the ground. The kinetic energy causes an impact, causes a small crater, and that's the end of it.
And that is true. At least with how they're being used against Ukraine, that's definitely true. And that's also why we're seeing that generally there wouldn't really be a reason to hit Kyiv, because what are they going to do, folks? And we also know that the MIRVs are not that accurate. So they're going to land a couple of them probably on residential buildings, maybe wound or kill a couple of Ukrainian civilians, and cause really no actual damage. They'd be able to get more damage with an Iskander in Kyiv than they would the Oreshnik. And then that's going to open up the Ukrainians into blowing up the Kremlin, the Russian Ministry of Defense, and a couple of other buildings that would be key to Russian governmental operations in Moscow. And once those are hit, the Russians are going to be losing a lot of face, not only in the Western world, where some people still think that they have something going for them, but they're also going to be losing a lot of face for the domestic population in the Russian Federation, because now it's going to look like they're exceptionally weak. They started the war 4 years and 4 months ago at this point, and now we're watching, at least they would be watching, Ukrainian drones blowing up at literal government decision-making center sites inside of Moscow. So that probably wouldn't be that smart of a move for the Russian Federation, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that larger IRBM situation the best we can. And we also were able to hear that Putin did add on to this today in a statement that was made on state television that he is threatening to strike more infrastructure sites in response to attacks on Russia, while claiming that Russia is moving forward in Ukraine, just not as fast as desired. He says that NATO countries joined after 2022 to get a piece of the pie if Russia loses, and claims that 700,000 troops are currently participating in the ongoing conflict. I gotta find it interesting, though, folks, that nowadays Putin is finding it completely impossible to even just flat out deny that the Russians are doing poorly. He had to admit that the Russian economy is shrinking and it's basically in a depression, but he said that that was a designed thing and an intended thing and it's actually good for Russia. And now he's saying that, we're advancing, it's just that we're nowhere close to what we actually want, basically. So everything's being described as a failure these days. It's just being softened up in the wordage a little bit.
Yeah, Russia's advancing into the landfill. They're going down. It's what you call they're getting a bull crush inside the Russian economy right now. But that's a good thing, of course, because the master, grandmaster, chess master Vladimir Putin, he designed it that way, folks. He designed it so that way the Russian economy would go into the toilet instead of to the moon, because that's the way you want it in a good economy.
That's always how it works. In a successful economy, as we all know, folks, the stock market doesn't go up and people's quality of life goes up. Everything goes downwards, because that clearly is success, as we all know. Or at least what a lot of people are describing as success these days around most of the world. Moving us on out of that news in Moscow, however, we did get to see that in the meantime, while Putin is saying that they're absolutely winning the war on all fronts, they still don't appear to trust the Moscow air defenses enough. Mind you, there's hundreds of air defense systems around Moscow, and they're still flying more in as we speak. We can see another mobile Pantsir system being brought in by an Mi-26 and most likely dropped off on the roof of a skyscraper somewhere in the Moscow city area.
That's just so absurd, by the way. Also, did you say what system that was right there?
These are little Pantsir turrets that are put on like a steel girder stand. It's basically like the Pantsir S1 truck, just without the truck. It's only the turret.
So have they dismantled like the normal truck-based version of that? Have they dismantled it to get this on this chassis right here? Because how are they getting that?
I think it's actually like an independently made system. I need to find a picture of this thing. Like the one that's on like the box. Here we go. It's called the Pantsir SMDE. This is actually what I was trying to find right here. And it's quite literally just the turret you would put on the truck, but instead of putting it on the truck, they put it on this little girder system below it, and you can set this up as like a permanent point defense system. This is kind of Russia's attempt, in a way, of creating something similar to like a CRAM or something like a NASAMS, but portable, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, honestly, it seems like they're putting all the air defense around Moscow still, because we'll get to the footage here soon, but the occupied Ukrainian territories that Russia is currently occupying, it pretty much has no air defense there. We'll get to that in a minute in Melitopol and places like that. There's largely no missile-based air defenses in those areas for the most part. It's just a whole bunch of Russians with machine guns firing, wildly at the sky, which doesn't work that well. Just a little spoiler alert.
It doesn't work well at all, actually, and it doesn't really seem like these sorts of deployable turrets are really doing that well within Moscow either, at least in prior attacks where we saw them being used. Didn't really seem like they were that effective. In the midst of this all, the Ukrainians have conducted a new drone strike campaign against the Russian Federation, and while we have seen that there are drone swarms flying deep into Russia at this moment right now, the more important strikes to talk about today are the ones that happen in the occupied territories throughout the entirety of the southern front. And this is where things have gotten particularly interesting over the day. As a lot of y'all will know, we've been talking about the frontline situation supply-wise for a couple of weeks here on the channel because it's been getting into absolute states of despotism, if we could describe it that way, where there's basically nothing left for any of the Russian armed forces to be able to work off of. We also know that air defenses are becoming incredibly sparse as well, because most of the air defenses in the country have been put in Moscow, or they're being destroyed on the front in such a fast rate, they're largely disappearing and becoming extinct as usable frontline systems. And that has been proven true today in most every area of the front, especially in the Donbass, to show y'all here really quickly. Moving us on into Luhansk area, we did get to see footage that came out today of nighttime attacks that were conducted against the city of Luhansk. And from what we can tell, there's absolutely no air defenses, at least legitimate air defenses to speak of, rather than maybe some small arms and some light machine guns. But throughout the entirety of the occupied territories tonight, in all the footage that we have, the strongest air defenses that we could see were just light machine guns, and most of them were around Melitopol. Elsewhere, there was basically none. So here's our clips that came out of Luhansk over the night. We see the strike in the distance. And at this point, there had been absolutely no air defense fire to speak of, not even an AK.
It's just rumblings of trouble in the distance.
We hear another drone coming in. You hear someone flooring it as well. That's louder than the drones even. We see another car driving by below as we quietly, faintly hear the drone in the distance. And we hear the drone continuing to rev up and down on its way to its target.
It really does sound like a leaf blower revving up and down.
It really does, honestly. Oh, we finally see something in the sky up there. Oh, it's machine gun fire, actually, in a star shell. So we finally see a little bit of air defense fire. It looks like one machine gun and one star shell that immediately extinguished, quite literally in seconds. So that star shell failed. And now we can see another detonation. This clip, by the way, is unbelievably quiet. As far as strike, there's another strike right there, a third one. The clip is unbelievably quiet, but that's actually the most interesting part of this, is that outside the drones blowing up on their targets in Luhansk, there's nothing going on. And that's showing us something very important. The whole city of Luhansk, which is a supply hub for the northern front of the Russian armed forces in the Donbass, doesn't have any air defense to speak of. There's one guy with a machine gun, it seemed, in the whole city. And outside of that, there's no air defenses left. Not even anything, for example, like mobile fire groups with tentacles. There's none of that even. All of those air defenses seem to have disappeared. We also got another clip here, kind of showing the same thing, the strike from another angle, close nearby. And once again, no air defenses to speak of for the larger part. We also got this clip as well, showing that little star shell in the distance and also the sound of the strike. And the fourth clip here also shows us the strike from the same angle, largely a duplicate clip. Moving us on out of Luhansk, we also saw in the Olchevsk area that there were some strikes here as well, but largely these appeared to either be duplicates or the locations were getting mixed up, as we did confirm that there were strikes on Olchevsk and Luhansk overnight, but it looks like some of the clips in our first iteration might have gotten mixed up a little bit, and they're from both cities, but they were just amalgamated as the Luhansk region. Moving us on out of that and down towards Donetsk, we've also been able to see that Ukrainian FPV drones and long-distance strike drones, while that music be hitting that beat on God, are continuing to strike Russian logistics around the highways near to Donetsk, which is also showing us, once again, that there is actively no air defenses in the entirety of the Donbass right now. Ukrainian drones are able to operate freely without any concern of being stricken or destroyed by any Russian air defenses, even including the smallest air defense element, the mobile fire group, throughout the whole of the Donbass. We can see this clip here, once again showing Ukrainian FPV drones targeting and striking Russian supply trucks around the highways surrounding the city of Donetsk, with absolutely no air defenses nearby to speak of.
Also, do you notice that, by the way, that right before the drones are going in, like on some of these clips right here, you'll see there's like a little box around it. It'll say manual, like right there. Do you notice that?
Yeah, I think that's because it's handing it over to the operator at that point.
Yep, that's what it is. That's the AI assisted targeting in action right there that we're seeing in this clip right there. The AI takes it close to the target, and then once it gets nearby, the Ukrainians can flip it into manual, which they appear to be doing right here, and then they guide it for the final leg of the target strike, like right at the very end, and then they hit it.
Really, it's honestly pretty impressive. Some of these are actually being guided all the way in by the AI, if you notice, because the box never goes to manual, it stays green. Like this one.
I'm still highly impressed with the system they're using with that. I'm not sure which company they're partnering with to like come up with that system. I think it might be a US based company, but I don't want to say the name of it because I don't know that for certain yet. But they have a master system that tracks every single drone that goes into the Russian occupied territories, and it's literally just one system that tracks them all at once. So it's basically like one big control panel that they can look at in a command center, and it shows where they are on the map at any given point in time before they hit the target. It also lets them jump to the camera of any of those drones at any given time. It's really remarkable, like how well put together and cohesive it all is compared to the way it was just a year ago. It was very disjointed just a year ago. Now it's all centralized.
It really is something, honestly, a very impressive sort of an evolution in how their drone capabilities have evolved. The tactics and also the technology as well has been something of what we can describe almost as a monumental leap from what the drones even looked like way early on in the war when they were literally just DJI Mavics equipped with RPG warheads underneath. It's come a long way since then, and most of them are now built entirely inside of Ukraine or built somewhere else and then shipped into Ukraine, in the Western world at least. But moving us on out of the Donetsk area and down to Melitopol, we also saw that within Melitopol, this is the only area that we saw air defenses of any note to speak of today in the occupied territories. Here's the clip showing the air defenses in Melitopol and also the Ukrainian strike that was conducted as well. And this was the largest air defense we saw in the city today, which was just machine guns. We see the impact there as well.
Nonstop tracer fire, and also they didn't even get it again. Honestly, it seems like every time you see pure chaos with the Russians firing stuff everywhere, they almost never hit their target. Like, it seems like the less the fire there is, the more higher chance they have of actually hitting something.
Really, honestly, it does, you know? Like, it really does seem like that's the case. But it is showing us still that Melitopol is the only city we've seen so far, folks, with any air defenses, actual air defenses to speak of. And even here, it just looked to be a couple of light machine guns, and that was it. So it looks like the air defenses across the board have completely collapsed in the entirety of the occupied areas. We are not seeing a single larger air defense gun in Luhansk, Donetsk, Melitopol, and the only place we've seen an air defense missile today was near Sevastapol, which is still largely expected, at least for now. But throughout most of the occupied territories near to the front, it appears there's been a complete air defense collapse. There is nothing left to be able to defend the skies around these areas, and Ukrainian drones are able to target, strike, and fly wherever they wish, meaning that the Ukrainians are largely about to achieve, or have achieved at this point, air superiority against the Russian Federation, with drone forces being the changing factor in that airspace. Not aircraft, not helicopters, drones. This is something that, to me, is making it pretty clear, at least at the point right now, that the Ukrainian armed forces have changed the face of how wars are fought, with how drone warfare is starting to evolve the battlefield. In the meantime, we did get a little bit of unfortunate news today from the area around the Chanhar Gap. It looks like a new pontoon bridge has been moved in, or they have replaced the old pontoon bridge. Well, actually, they've either replaced or repaired the pontoon bridge that was hit a couple of days ago within this area and knocked out, because we did get to see that they are allowing trucks to travel across the pontoon bridge today via satellite, but it appears that it's only about one at a time due to the weight constrictions and also the width of the bridge. This means the supplies are still making it in and out of the area of Crimea, but it is at a snail's pace. There are significant queues of trucks and vehicles waiting on both sides of the pontoon bridge to be able to try and cross, so this does mean that while supplies have not been completely knocked out to Crimea, and we do have to update that now that we have satellite footage to show that the pontoon bridge is still operational and has apparently been repaired or replaced, while it is still operational, it's not going going to be at the level that it was before. And this is going to be creating a supply bottleneck until the pontoon bridge is most likely hit and destroyed again, where the Russians will be seeing that there is a far decrease in the supplies and tonnage that can cross through the Chandar Gap because of that pontoon bridge that has been set up. We also were able to see...
Also, by the way, some people were saying, I thought it had no water. That's actually a different one. I think that's the Armyansk one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right on that?
Yeah, that's Armyansk.
Yeah, that's the Armyansk one. That's the one where the canal was dried up for the most part, and then there's like a dry bed of the water where it used to be. It's kind of dried up now, but the ground is still very soft there, so they still got to use something. Like they got to cover something up. They can't just drive straight across the canal bed. That's not going to work. It's going to sink the trucks. That's a totally different one.
So the difference between them, and these are the two crossing areas. Armyansk's bridge, if I can say that right, and that's very hard to say, it crosses over a canal. This canal was originally fed by the Novokakhovka Reservoir here to the north. Since the Novokakhovka Dam was blown up in 2023 and the reservoir has been depleted, there is no water to pass over the locks entering this canal to send it down to Crimea, meaning that this canal is completely dry and the bridge is crossing over a dry canal. This is actually kind of what it looks like in the present day. It's just that the satellite photography has not been updated here since 2023. Over here at the Chandar Gap, this is a natural waterway and a natural gap that exists here on the eastern side of the Crimean Peninsula. And this one will always be filled with water, because for this one to not be filled with water, the world's oceans are going to have to shrink in size drastically. So this one's always going to be filled with water, and that's the difference between the two, is that one of them is trying to cross an artificial canal, the other one's crossing a naturally occurring strait, or actually a strait, even though it's a very small one. I was about to call it something else. It is a strait. This one's crossing a naturally made strait within the area that they really can't close up, and that's why they have bridges over it. There is another location, however, and I was actually going to bring this up here, the Henichsk Arabat spit bridges. But the thing about this, though, is that these bridges are not that usable. The reason being is that the detour here would be so large that a truck would run out of fuel before it ever even made it into Crimea. This bridge crosses onto the Henichsk Spit, which is this long little island right here on the edge of Crimea. And there's no bridges, mind you all, once you get onto the Henichsk Spit that just lets you cross over into Crimea, like say at Dzhankoy or Zhelebovka or anywhere around there. You have to drive all the way down the Spit to its southern end at Kamyansk, basically at Kerch, and then turn around and then start driving back into Crimea. So the range on that alone, if you want to try and take that sort of a route, let's start it at Rostov, and let me show you all how long this would be round trip. So we go on through Taganrog, we make it to Mariupol, which is one of the major supply hubs in the area. That's already 100 miles. And reminder to everybody, a loaded semi has a total range of about 800 miles, 800 to 900 miles, a European semi does. So it's already done 100 miles just to make it into Mariupol, which is hardly in Ukraine. Then it continues on down this highway towards to the area of Berdyansk, which then now it's made it about 160 miles in, continues down the M14, hopefully not getting blown up the whole way, and at any point it could get targeted and blown up by Ukrainian drones, which ends the trip right then and there, but then it finally makes it to Melitopol. At this point, it's driven about 220 miles just to make it into the area. Fuel is almost completely run out at Melitopol, so there's no way to refuel here, so that's why we're starting the trip over at Rostov-on-Don, because that seems to be the only place right now where there's a reliable source of diesel. Now they have to make it all the way down from Melitopol to the Crimean Peninsula, and then this is where the problem's going to come in. Normally, when they make it down here, they just continue on to the Chandar Bridge, and then they cross and go right in. And that makes the total trip one way about 400 miles, meaning that they're running out of fuel by the time they make it back to Rostov-on-Don if everything's gone well and they haven't run out of fuel in the meantime. However, with the Chandar Bridge being out and the capacity limited for crossings, some of these the trucks are either going to have to sit there, and if the pontoon bridge is destroyed, considering that there's no way to make it over the Armyansk bridge at this point either, they would then have to take the Henichsk Spit bridge and drive all the way down the Henichsk Spit. That means they'd have to take a left here into Henichsk, and then drive onto the Spit, and then drive all the way down it. And let me measure that out for y'all, because y'all are going to see the range is unbelievable to make it just to Simferopol at this point. So they have to drive all the way down here, all the way down to the south on the Spit to Kamyansk. Then they take this road here, drive south, drive this way, and we want to make sure to get this one correct because this one's actually a pretty important one to get right here, and particularly precise. So now they've made it 370 miles. If they turned around right there, they're probably going to be out of fuel by Rostov. So then they have to drive all the way down the highway, mind you, to Simferopol. And if they need to make it to Sevastopol, the journey is going to be a good bit farther than Simferopol. But we're just going to do Simferopol just to make sure that we have a running statistics of what it would look like for them to go down the Henichesk area. 440 miles. They're out of fuel, and there's no way for them to make it back. They can drive all the way maybe to Mariupol, and then they would run out of fuel there. But if they try and go down the Henichesk spit, it's just not a viable sort of a supply route. There's no way to pick up diesel right now in Crimea, and that means the truck is now stranded in Crimea, or it's stranded in the occupied territories to get blown up. Therein lies the problem. If the Chonhar Bridge and the Armyansk Bridge are knocked out, the Ukrainians don't even have to knock out the Henichesk Bridge because there's just literally no physical way for them to make the trip via the Henichesk Bridge into Crimea and out because they'd be out of fuel before they ever return back to Rostov-on-Don. So so really, honestly, while it's been pointed out by some, well, there is the Henichesk bridges. The Henichesk bridges just don't really count. It's a logistically unviable sort of a route to use. And on top of that, the road in this area is also pretty crude as well. I mean, it's literally a dirt road in most places that looks to be one lane, and really a semi-truck isn't going to be driving what's basically a marsh on a one-lane dirt road to be able to make it in and out of Crimea and make that a viable supply route. It's just logistically unfeasible. But moving us on out of that bit of news and that little update of information here to the Chonhar area, we also saw that Sevastopol did come under attack last night, and there was some air defense fire being launched from Camp Foylin on the southern end of the Sevastopol Peninsula. And here's that clip right here. And we see the launch of the missile right there, going on up into the sky, and on its way to try and hit its target. This is the only missile-based air defense we've seen in the whole of occupied Ukraine, and it's only left around Sevastopol and Simferopol at this point. We also saw a bit of video today that showed us some damage that was caused to a Russian warship, the Russian reconnaissance ship, the Ivan Kurs. Let's take a look at it. Do you notice that charring damage right there to the rear of the vessel? And the fact that they now covered it up with scaffolding to try and repair it? Why, yes.
Honestly, I couldn't tell if it was scaffolding or not. It looked like just the normal part of the ship. Because, Russian ships aren't exactly what you'd call, beauties for the most part. Usually look like junk piles. So I thought it was just a normal thing.
You thought it was an old garbage scow. And honestly, I wouldn't mistake you for that. It kind of does look like one. But that scaffolding, that's not a part of its main mast or sail. That's what its main mast looks like normally on the Ivan Kurs. That's what it looks like now covered with scaffolding. They've also covered the rest of the superstructure with some sort of a brown-looking tarp like deal, like maybe canvas or something along those lines, because they're trying to hide the damage. So it looks like the Ukrainian strike that hit around the area of the bay that we covered the other day, and we said we don't really know what it hit. It looks to have hit the Ivan Kurs and caused damage to the vessel. We can also see in this clip here that it appears that there is some sort of black burn damage near to the rear of the superstructure, showing that the vessel has actually been hit and damaged a pretty good bit for them to build scaffold near to the mast and cover the entirety of the superstructure with tarp. So we don't know how bad the damage is at this point, because they completely covered everything up after the attack happened, but it does show us that one Russian reconnaissance ship has been knocked out. Funnily enough, folks, the Ivan Kurs was actually close to the British coast a little while ago. I think it was 6 months ago or so, and the British were making a big deal about it being around there and possibly dragging anchors over some cables, and now it appears that the Ukrainians might have been able to knock the thing out with one drone attack. So good on the Ukrainians, and it's also nice to see they were able to hit it. Also, by the way, folks, the Russians kind of get a little bit of a wiggle room here, because a lot of y'all will go, wait a minute, how in the world did it make it through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles? It's not an armed naval ship. So it actually circumvents the blockade that the Turks have, to where armed ships can't enter or leave the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles right now. They're completely blocked on either side. So this one, because it's not armed, and it's technically, I think they call it an oceanographic survey ship or something like that for the Russian Navy, it actually gets through the loophole, and it's able to go through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles into Sevastopol and out. One of the few ships that actually can. But outside of that, it does appear that a load of people right now are also talking about another interesting event that happened over the course of the day as well, near to the area of the Krasnodar Oblast. There was an alarm that came out today that there was a red level of drone threat near to the area of the Kerch Strait. towards Krasnodar, and these drones did come incredibly close to the area of the Kerch Bridge, which has led a lot of people to wonder, is the Kerch Bridge going to be targeted next? Is this some sort of a attempt by the Ukrainians to give a little bit of a warning, in a sense, that the Kerch Bridge is coming, and put a great amount of fear and anticipation in the Russian command that the bridge, which is the only supply link left, might be knocked out here soon? Or is it just that it was an attack on Krasnodar and they just happened to pass by the Kerch, kind of as usual? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so that's the question. Do you think the notorious Kerch Bridge will be struck yet again? Because it's been a very long time since we've seen the Ukrainians actually strike the Kerch Bridge. How long ago was it, by the way? Can you remember when the last strike was? Was it like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or something?
I think it was like a year and a half ago or 2 years or so. I think it was somewhere in between the two of those.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. It's been a very long time since the Ukrainians actually tried to target the Kerch Bridge, but that is the main artery right there. Now, granted, there is a weight restriction on the bridge, but some smaller logistics trucks can still use the bridge, but they can't put large fuel haulers on the bridge because it violates the weight restrictions because the Kerch Bridge is still damaged from the last strikes a year and a half ago. So, will Ukraine strike it again very soon? Because we did see today, like the enforcer just mentioned, drones were flying literally right past the area of the bridge, and they were apparently going for spots in mainland Russia near Krasnodar, and they flew near the bridge. And generally, I didn't hear of anything happening for the most part, so maybe that was a test. But do you think Ukraine's going to hit it? 69% said yes, Ukraine will hit it very soon, while 19% said no, Ukraine will skip out on the Kerch Bridge, and 3% said it's really not possible to strike it. And I personally think that Ukraine wants to hit it, but the problem we've been seeing over the past year and a half since the last strikes is Putin has moved as much air defense around the Kerch Bridge as he has around his mansions, his several mansions around Moscow. So it's very hard to get anything through because the Russians have so much air defense around there, and they're obviously on high alert. They're doing security checks for trucks crossing the bridge as well. The Russians know that Ukraine wants to hit it and to hit the bridge, and they're going to try to prevent that at all costs. So Ukraine could try to lob a flamingo at it. That's possible as well, but it's very possible the Russians could shoot it down. As we saw in the video the other day, the flamingo is a rather slow-moving cruise missile. It does not move very fast, and Russia might have a chance to shoot it down. So I think Ukraine might attempt to do it, but I'm kind of on the fence. I'm actually with the 9%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I'm with the 69%. I have a feeling that they're probably going to be trying to hit it here in the near future. And I see some people saying in the chat, well, they're leaving it as a path for the civilians to leave. How are the civilians supposed to leave, though, if they don't have any gas to put in their cars to go drive across the bridge? So at that point, the civilians are kind of stuck where they're at as well, and whatever happens, happens, at least as far as I believe the Ukrainians would be concerned, because there's really no point in leaving a bridge open for someone to drive across if you don't have a car or the fuel necessary to drive back across the bridge. So I don't really think that'd be in the strategic concerns. And also on top of that, the Russians really can't fight tooth and nail if they end up getting trapped or surrounded in Sevastopol, and there's really no way for them to escape. They just run out of supplies, and then they have to surrender. That's usually how it works in most common wars. So I would say that the Ukrainians are probably going to try and strike it at some point here in the future. Probably, I would say, in the next couple of months, probably the next 4 months, because the Russians are going to try and use it to some element as a supply corridor into Crimea. And considering that they are going to try that and attempt that, it is going to make it a military target, and they would be able to hit it and try and knock it out again. The Ukrainians could try and can come up with some creative ways to cause damage to the bridge or knock it out. We've seen that they've used literally every single idea under the sun at this point to try and blow up something on the bridge and cause enough damage to knock it out. So I would actually believe that there's still a good likelihood the Ukrainians are going to target it. With missiles and drones, maybe not. But with other means, definitely. We've seen them try and do that many times at this point, and most of the time, they've generally succeeded. Once they do that, Crimea will be completely cut off from supply, and if the Ukrainians get a frontline breakthrough near to Zaporizhia, and they start to push down directly onto Crimea, and the Russian armies in there have no way to retreat across into Russia, and they also have no way to fight back because they've completely run out of food, water, supplies, and everything else, they really have no other option but to surrender and be at the mercy of the Ukrainians once they become prisoners of war to get some sort of food and water at a minimum to survive. There isn't really such a thing, especially in the modern day, of an army being completely cut off from supplies like ammunition and food and fighting to the death. That's something you would see in a heavily indoctrinated force like the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II, but you really don't see that in the modern Russian army. The Russian army nowadays actually has a pretty decent tendency of surrendering surrendering whenever it appears that their position is completely untenable and supplies have run out in prior instances that we've seen, and I would believe that the situation would repeat inside of Crimea, meaning that the Ukrainians might not have to fire a single shot in the Crimean Peninsula to take it. The Russian forces there might just surrender to the Ukrainians and then basically hand over Crimea due to a complete lack of supplies or equipment. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we've also been able to hear of something else quite interesting today, and I want to make sure, folks, to get into this one, because I know Matthew made a special request to get into this one before the beginning of the show. I said I generally didn't find it worthwhile to cover, but now thinking about it, it is kind of worthwhile to cover to a degree. And we're going to get into this one because I know that this one is the heat. It's the juice, and a lot of people have been talking about this stuff today, and it's been a point of great controversy because it came out from the Director of National Intelligence. So Matthew, get that poll running and get it nice and warm. Get that thing cooked up and delicious, because we're going to be getting into this one right now. Because before we get into everything else that's happening, either in the Middle East or Ukraine, we do have to cover something that came out quite interestingly enough today in the Americas. And we're also going to be talking about the strike on the Tren de Aragua cartel leader as well, kind of in the same fell swoop, considering that this will be the Americas news for the day. Many of y'all will have seen that the Director of the National Intelligence put out a statement, a video statement earlier today, which looks like a literal clip right out of The Boys, like with the lighting and everything, no joke. But outside of that, the video went on to state a decent amount of claims, saying that the U.S. government had been supporting biolabs inside of Ukraine, along with 30 other countries, and a decent amount of interesting claims had been made. Matthew, do you think we ought to just play the clip for folks to hear it, or do you think we ought to try and summarize it here?
I would say we could play it, but the problem is though, like, well, we could probably just summarize it better. We won't hit every single point that she made in the video because obviously I think it's like 3 minutes long or something like that. But generally speaking, I'll just say summarize it.
So I'm gonna summarize it with a statement that was made here, and then I'll add a little bit more to it just to make sure that we can get all of the details as close as we can. According to the Director of National Intelligence, they said, today I'm releasing never-before-seen intelligence revealing new evidence of past U.S. government funding to more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries, including Ukraine. In support of the President's executive order to end federal funding of dangerous gain-of-function research around the world and increase transparency and accountability, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence will continue working with partners across the administration to identify where these labs are, what pathogens they contain, and what research is being conducted. Then in the video...
Moly. Also, by the way, before you go any further, by the way, I just want to point something out. They literally say right here, what they say over 112, what was it, like 30 countries and 120 biolabs, they say. But they made a point out of those 30 countries to specifically mention Ukraine. And the question is why? Like, what is the significance of specifically pointing out Ukraine and emphasizing just that country alone out of the 30 that they're alleging are involved with this? That's already suspicious on its face. Also, like, in addition to that, by the way, they're saying they're trying to identify where the labs are. Well, also, we'll get into it here in just a minute when we start debunking this, but it's been known that there are labs inside of Ukraine. It's been known since 2005 that that's the case. So that's also disingenuous as well, to say the least. But we got we got evidence to, like, debunk this whole BS story right here. But go ahead, Enforcer.
But to sum up the statement that was actually made in the video here really quickly, the Director of National Intelligence went on to say that the U.S. did fund 120 biolabs in 30 countries, but then particularly had to mention that Ukraine was one of those countries, and that it was considered extremely dangerous by the United States for them to be able to try and control these biolabs and what was going on there. But then she added on in her own statement that the reasoning why it was dangerous was because the Russian Federation could possibly take over and occupy these quote-unquote biolabs and then try and use whatever's in it against Ukraine or the West. Not that the Ukrainians were going to be using it, that the Russians could take it over and then use it themselves. That's literally what the Director of National Intelligence said in the video. Then went on to state everything else about how this was covered up and lied about for years by the prior administration and every other administration before that, because clearly the U.S. government didn't let anybody know about this, and it's a secret, a state secret, that they were supporting biolabs inside of Ukraine. The problem is that that's straight bullshit. Like, I'm not even going to mince words with that. That we have known about funding like this for years. Here's an actual infographic here and a brief statement and summary from years prior. I believe, Matthew, what year was this from right here? What, 2005, I believe?
So just to give some background to this before we read it or go into more detail about this, what this is that you're looking at right here is a pamphlet that was put out, I believe, by the Department of Defense, I believe, who put this out. It was one of those departments that put this out. But what this outlines is what's known as the Biological Threat Reduction Program, known as the BTRP, which is a part of the Department of Defense's Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, which was implemented way back in 2005 to take control of the former USSR biological laboratories that were already in Ukraine, by the way, that the USSR had set up and was using for biological weapons production inside of Ukraine. The US came in and helped fund to transition those laboratories from weapons manufacturing to doing research on, viruses and things like that for public health concerns. So the US has been funding these laboratories, these so-called biolabs, to transition them away from weapons development since 2005. So this is nothing new whatsoever. And anybody involved in the intelligence community would know about this. This is not something that's like mysterious or unknown. This is literally a pamphlet right here that was given out to the public about the whole program right there. So also, by the way, in the evidence that the lady put out, she put out like a couple of slideshows or something and declassified some slides about this program right here. It basically outlines this pamphlet for the most part. This so-called smoking gun that she keeps talking about is the Biological Threat Reduction Program that's been in existence for over decades at this point. So, I mean, that's very disingenuous to pretend like it's brand new information when it's been known for such a long time. And also, I want to point this out as well before you take back over for a second. It literally points out in all the evidence, it points out that there's a very high risk of Russia using this program right here, which is for innocent purposes. They're going to use that for propaganda to justify some sort of action against Ukraine. It literally says it right here in the pamphlet, and it says it in the evidence that the lady put out from the DNI. It says it literally in the slides that she put out.
And to read y'all some summaries here from this actual statement, or largely the pamphlet that's been put out several years prior to the public, this is what it stated. The Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, Biological Threat Reduction Program, is the following. The BTRP, which is short for the Biological Threat Reduction Program, priorities in Ukraine are to help them consolidate and secure pathogens and to continue to ensure Ukraine can detect and report diseases and let's see here, outbreaks before they pose security or stability threats. All of the BTRP's efforts are peaceful in nature and subject to rigorous export control measures and vetting processes. BTRP sponsors no gain of function research or quote-unquote human experimentation. Ukraine is a state party to biological and toxin weapons conventions. In accordance with an August 2005 CTR agreement, the DoD has been funding security upgrades at Ukrainian biological laboratories where collections of pathogens are kept. The BTRP has supported 46 laboratories, facilities, and diagnostic sites for the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture. BTRP also provided the Ministry of Defense with 3 mobile diagnostic laboratories with the goal of enhancing the systems of disease surveillance and emergency preparedness in the armed forces of Ukraine. All of this assistance improved Ukraine's COVID-19 response. All of these Ukrainian facilities owned and operated by the government of Ukraine, which aim to improve human and animal health capacity for the people of Ukraine. On a daily basis, Russia propagates, either directly through state-run media outlets or through the use of surrogates, disinformation aimed at the BTRP's laboratories and capacity building efforts in the former Soviet Union countries. The Lugar Center in Georgia and the Central Reference Laboratory in Kazakhstan are the primary targets, but more recent disinformation efforts have targeted laboratories in Ukraine. Through these disinformation campaigns, Russia falsely claims the United States, and specifically the DTRA, is developing biological weapons in laboratories in these countries, as well as killing local populations with purposeful releases of biological agents. Russia illegally took possession of 2 Ukrainian-owned labs that BTRP upgraded in 2014 and continues to deny Ukrainian access to these facilities. To date, we are unaware of any attempt to use those facilities for disinformation purposes. BTRP is just one of many organizations providing equipment and training to these facilities. Other supporters, including, among others, the European Union, the World Health Organization, international universities and research institutions, as well as other U.S. interagency partners. Even though BTRP has had an active biological engagement with the government of Ukraine since 2005, there are many Ministry of Health and Ministry of Defense facilities that have not asked for or received equipment or training from the United States. This literally, this has been going on, mind you all, since 2005. If you don't believe this, this is literally a published pamphlet by the U.S.'s Defense Threat Response Agency. There's their seal up there in the top left corner of the screen on the pamphlet.
Well, you get this. Even if you don't take this pamphlet as proof of what we're saying right here, I put the link in the chat right now, Enforcer. Click the link and go to the DNI's website, literally right now, and go click on the evidence. There's like a handful of slides that they quoted as evidence. Go down and you'll see the little click here button in the middle of the article. There it is, right there. So look at the first paragraph. This is the evidence, by the way, that the DNI is currently citing that's proving that somehow there's like biolabs in Ukraine. Read the very first highlighted paragraph on the left.
Hold up, I gotta prep for this one, Matthew. This one's gonna bring the roof down. All right, so we're ready. The Institute of Experimental and Clinical Veterinary Medicine, the IACVM, in Kharkiv probably houses at least some dangerous pathogens and almost certainly remains vulnerable to long-standing Russian information operations, seizure, or damage.
It literally says it right there in the first damn paragraph. They literally highlighted it. It says that this right here is going to be used for Russian disinformation campaigns, meaning Russian propaganda. I want to remind people, by the way, before Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022, they were shouting from the rooftops, someone, oh, there's biolabs developing bioweapons in Ukraine. That was hogwash. It's still hogwash, but yet they're trying to make it sound like there's active biolabs and they're insinuating they're doing bad things. They didn't say that directly, but they're insinuating it. So, I mean, that's literally insane right here. It's very disingenuous to come out with this evidence right here and try to make it sound like Ukraine's up to something or somehow the U.S. is implicated in, doing something against Russia. That is like unbelievable. When I saw that earlier today, I was fuming like how disingenuous this is. This is atrocious.
Oh, by the way, let's get into why this facility's dangerous. Like, that's just the next sentence right after this one. Let's get into why it's dangerous, by the way. Because maybe, folks, it's dangerous because the Ukrainians have created biological weapons of mass destruction to kill all of the Russians. So let's read what it's actually dangerous for. The Institute, which was founded in the 1920s and may have had Soviet biological warfare ties, specializes in veterinary medicine, virology, and toxicology. And apparently, the whole reason why they're saying that this facility is dangerous is that it houses Soviet-era bioweapons that the Soviet Union was making inside of Ukraine, and they might still be in the facility. And that's why it's dangerous. Not that Ukraine's making anything new, it's that they're having to keep hold of all of this dangerous Soviet black magic shit that was made in the 1970s and the 80s, and the U.S. is trying to make sure that the Russians don't blow up the facility so they release it into the open air in the city of Kharkiv. So in no way, shape, or form does this thing pose a threat to the Russian Federation at all. If anything, it poses a threat to the Ukrainian population in the city of Kharkiv because the Russians might blow the thing up.
Yeah, it's absurd, really, man. Also, by the way, she's on the way out. By the way, she's currently leaving the job. I'm not sure when her last day is in that position, but she's currently on the way out. But before she had to leave that position, she had to do this little scummy move right here. This is well, there's no other way to say it. This is a very scummy move right here to do this type of stuff, and make it seem like it's something that's not. So just like. How and somebody explain to me how the hell this was in American interest to release this data right here and start saying stuff like that and declassify this stuff. How was that in American interest? It was not at all. And it's like, not only that, but the program to fund these biolabs to keep these deadly pathogens under wraps has been in existence since 2005. So it's absurd. It literally gave Vladimir Putin the exact justification to start justifying his propaganda to the Russian people. This is going to let Putin further justify and rally his people against Ukraine. That's what that's going to do, because he's going to go out, and I'm already seeing it today. The Russian propagandists are all over the place talking about, look, the U.S. admitted to having biolabs in Ukraine, and now they're using that to tell the Russians, look, it is the evil Americans coming after us. And our own intelligence service put that bullcrap out.
I gotta say something, folks. I also just read here, what in the world is dangerous here that they have in Ukraine? It's anthrax and brucella bacteria. That's it. That's all they say that the Ukrainians have that's dangerous. Do y'all know how many countries have anthrax? Like, everybody has anthrax. Like, that's like the dumbest thing. That's like saying the sun's rising tomorrow. Literally every country on the planet, I'm pretty damn sure, has anthrax or brucella bacteria. So for them to act like, oh my god, they're creating biological weapons of mass destruction, that's pretty damn stupid, especially when they literally say right here, it's anthrax and brucella. But anyways, enough of that. Let's get to the poll on what people are talking about. But before we get to that, actually, looks like we have breaking news coming out at this moment right now. So, Matthew, what do we got on that breaking news? It sounds to me like something tragic has just happened to Crimea.
Okay, so we do have some breaking news right now. So let's jump away from the poll for just a second here and the whole biolabs thing, that whole garbage story for a second. We'll return back to that in just a second. We're currently hearing that there's Neptune cruise missiles currently lurking around Sevastapol, Crimea. They're currently flying in the area, and now the Kerch Bridge is reported to be closed as of right this second. So I'm not sure if Ukraine is planning on doing something tonight to the Kerch Bridge. Like, right now they're closing it. Apparently the Russians think that there's a legitimate threat to the bridge right now, but apparently Neptunes are lurking around the area, which is obviously a larger missile. I can't remember off the top of my head how big the payload is on a Neptune Ukrainian missile, but it's a pretty decent sized cruise missile, and it's currently around that area. So, unfortunately, what can you make of that?
That's very interesting here. It might be suggesting that they might be trying to conduct some form of an attack on the bridge right now. Neptune missiles are actually anti-ship missiles, but have been converted through the war to be the surface attack missiles because there's no sea targets to really try and hit or destroy. So this is showing that right now they're trying to use a converted anti-ship missile to possibly hit the bridge. And if that is successful tonight, we might see that Crimea is quite literally completely cut off. And then their only access would be the Henichesk Spit on the east side of Crimea. And if the Ukrainians blow up those bridges, then that leaves the pontoon bridge at Chanhar as the last connection to anything in Crimea.
Yeah, it seems like it. We just ran a poll on that a second ago saying are the Ukrainians going to target the Kerch Bridge, and hell, they might be doing it tonight from the looks of it. I was not expecting that, but of course, it's very early. We can't tell exactly what the target is, but the fact the Russians closed the bridge, that's a pretty interesting sign. I haven't heard any reports of air defense fire around the bridge. I haven't heard that yet, and I'm waiting to see if I get any information about that, but Neptune's being in the area of Sevastopol, that's already a pretty ugly sign for the Russians.
It is a pretty bad one. We'll have to see if we get any further updates or info out on the Kerch Bridge over the course of the night, but it looks like we might be watching the very collapse of the Crimean supply lines, and it might actually look like I was right on that poll earlier about them attacking it soon. A lot sooner than I thought. I said the next, 4 months. Apparently, they're attacking it within the next couple of minutes. But outside of that, though, it is time for us to circle back now to this whole bioweapons story that came out today out of the director of the National Intelligence Office. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So what do you think about this Ukrainian biolab story that the U.S. government put out? So 51% said it's total bullshit from the United States, while 30% said it sounds like the USA is actually complicit in biolabs, and 9% said 50-50 on this one. And I would say I'm with the 51%. This is absolute total bullshit from top to bottom. And I'm surprised. Well, I say surprised, but I'm sort of like half surprised and half not surprised. But luckily, though, the lady is leaving this position. So she won't be there for, I think, maybe a few more days or something like that, and then she'll be out of the position. But the fact this was even said out of an official office like that is insane. The fact that was actually put out. Because obviously, we've debunked the hell out of that at this point. So, it's disappointing to see this, and of course the Russians are going to run with it, and I hate that they got a propaganda victory like that, especially on something that literally doesn't even add up and hold any salt. It literally doesn't whatsoever. So it just I guess you can say we'll chalk that up to an idiot. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'd be with a 51%. It's absolute bullshit. And what's even more interesting, and some of y'all might not remember this, some of y'all might not have even been around long enough ago for this, but we talked about this at the very beginning of the war. And yeah, the Ukrainians have biolabs, but every country on the planet has some form of a biolab in it for the larger part. It's really stupid to point that out and make it sound like, oh my God, the Ukrainians might be creating a weapon of mass destruction in that thing. Do people not know that the CDC's lab in Atlanta is a biolab? Do people not know that, or any of the other CDC offices throughout the rest of the country? They have strains of every single deadly or dangerous virus or disease in the entirety of the world. In most of these disease centers of research, it's their job to research that stuff. You can't really conduct any science on biologics if you don't have any strains of any viruses or diseases inside of your lab to experiment with and to learn about. And also the idea of making it sound like the Ukrainians were trying to use this for harm is a little bit ridiculous, because if y'all don't know, anthrax naturally occurs, or at least the bacteria, which is the bacillus bacteria, naturally occurs in the soil in every part of the world. So it's important to agriculture. Like, for example, cattle can get anthrax. Like, that's just normal. So you have to try and find a way to combat it, and researching it is one way that you can learn how. Why in the world would the Ukrainians also be the ones to be pointed out the most in this, when there's also 29 other countries that apparently were also supporting their biolabs operations, 120 of them, mind you all, but for some reason the Ukrainian ones are the ones that get the most look at by the Director of National Intelligence. Why don't the ones in the Baltic states, Poland, and the Stand Series countries in Central Asia get any attention?
It's absurd, man. It's absolutely absurd. It's like the equivalent of saying, you know, oh, breaking news, every country around the world has soil on their territory, but specifically Ukraine has soil, though. We have to remember that Ukraine has a lot of soil in their territory. It's like, why are we pointing out Ukraine? It's like, unless you're trying to do something specifically aimed at Ukraine, when you're covering 30 different countries in this report that came out, but including Ukraine, just to point out just that one, like, could you not make it any more obvious what you're attempting to do with that? It's like, it's pretty obvious.
The U.S. sends food in humanitarian support to every country in the world, especially Ukraine. It sounds to me like we're trying to feed the Ukrainian army to give them full bellies to fight the Russians. Oh, it's like, what type of stupid point is that? And also, I like how everybody just kind of glossed over that when they were listening to that today in the discussions that were had online. Why in the world is there no attention on the other 29 out of the 30 countries that were supposedly being funded and their biolabs operations were being supported by the United States? Why in the world was that the case? And also on top of that, another thing is that people who create biolabs, like for weaponized purposes, generally also run biolabs for non-weaponized purposes as a part of their company's operations. They're involved in the research and science of biologics. Why in the world would they not be involved in everything that entails? You know, folks, Boeing makes missiles that kill people. Boeing also makes the plane that you ride to go on a holiday down in Mexico, in Cancun. Does that mean that Boeing is a factory of weapons of mass destruction solely, and that's all they're working on every day? No, they might be working on getting you and, like sitting your ass down in a seat and flying you to New York. There's no way to say that that's the case. And this is trying to completely misrepresent the situation with this, which is just such a blatant misrepresentation that is just trying to slander the reputation of the Ukrainian state for no inherent reason. And if anything, it should be bringing up a question of, well, if it is supposed to be the sponsoring and support of bioweapons, well, then why in the world is the U.S. government involved in that? Shouldn't more of the blame be put towards the United States for funding that than the Ukrainians for doing it? It really says that the Americans are more so wanting to create the bioweapons than the Ukrainians, because we're giving them the money to work on them, if that was the case. But that isn't even the case. Like, it's a stupid story. And on top of that, we've already been able to hear about this publicly for decades, and now they're just acting like it's brand new. It's ridiculous. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the rest of the news that we have for the night, because we still have a significant amount of news that has been coming from around the entirety of the world, including the Middle East and also the rest of the Ukraine war news that we have not been able to get into today. So, Matthew, before we get on into that, I do want to take a brief moment here to get to chit-chat with the folks. We're going to be getting 3 questions from the chat and then moving on into the rest of the news that we have for the night. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so getting into our first of the super chats here. This one goes to none other than Carlos Santiago. And thank you very much, Carlos, for that $50 support right there. And we do appreciate it very much. And that is so far the largest super chat of the night. We do appreciate support because it does help to keep the channel running. And Carlos said, great newscast. And what is the latest with the Israel and Iran conflict?
And I got to thank you massively for the support, Carlos Santiago. And thank you so much for enjoying our great news broadcast. We try our best every day, and I hope that today has been a pretty decent one. Also having to go out of our way to debunk more U.S. government disinformation, which is just unreal. I mean, like literally their own proof disproves them. But beyond that, though, I do have to say a humongous thanks to you for that incredible support. And as far as the Israel-Iran conflict is going, it's largely stalled again. Right now, we're hearing of exchanges of fire that are still happening inside the Strait of Hormuz, but the U.S. is still assuring today that we're just hours away from a deal. It's just that the Iranians don't agree on most everything in the deal. So that really seems to be how it's going right now. Israel still fighting Hezbollah within southern Lebanon, and we are seeing that there are rocket barrages here and there between the two sides. But outside of that, there really isn't anything else going on at the moment. It's a fairly inactive sort of a conflict. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a huge thanks to you for the support. And I hope that does address that question incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the second question of the segment.
We also have here a $20 support from none other than Gnarly Carlson. And thank you very much, by the way, for that $20 support. And we do appreciate that very much. He said, congrats on 600K and LSA forever.
Hey, and a big thanks to you for the congrats on 600,000 subscribers. I never thought we'd make it here. I never did. I thought we maybe make it to like back in the day, like 300,000 subscribers, but it is unbelievable to see that we have been able to get up to 600,000 subscribers. It's unbelievable. And I got to say, a huge thanks to you for the congratulations, a huge thanks to you for the support, because the people who support this channel every single day through the crowdfunding, basically, here on the show, help us to keep this thing ad-free and sponsor-free, and help us to cover the news the way we want. It helps us to be able to cover the news in ways that other people do not like at all, especially some people who would like to control what we say by the funding that they would give us if we didn't have crowdfunding. And that's what allows us to be able to cover all of the news in the pro-American, pro-Western way that we do it, without holding any punches, stating facts where they are, whether they be good or bad, and realizing the realities of the situation, and then trying to argue from there what to do from that point that would be in the best interest of our nation, in the best interest in the sphere of influence that we built over the past 80 years. And I got to thank you incredibly for that support and helping this channel to keep it running, because folks like you have helped to make that possible for 1,570 days, and help us to continue to make that possible, hopefully for the rest of time that we're alive. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so this one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a 20 as well, and thank you, Zyper, for that support also. And he said, I'm thinking about creating my own professional Counter-Strike team. CS is a 5v5 first-person shooter game, and I'm stuck on naming a team, and I have one name, Wolves Gaming, but if you got a better one, that can write it down, and LSA forever.
Honestly, if I came up with a name and I was trying to keep with kind of like the doggish wolf name sort of a deal right there, I'd probably call them the Hellhounds. Like that would be a pretty sort of intimidating sort of a one. Kind of a World War I reference, by the way. Or you could call it the Teufelshund, which is what the Germans called the Marines at the, I believe it was the Second Battle of the Marne. They called them the Devil Dogs, and that's why the Marines are called Devil Dogs these days. You could call them the Teufelshund. That would be a pretty neat name. Kind of Scandinavian-ish sounding, sort of, more Germanic, really. But honestly, I would give those recommendations. Wolves Gaming, though, isn't bad at all. I mean, that's a pretty neat one. Or you could try and come up with things that bring up like a wolf, but don't directly say it. You know, like you could also do those as well. Those would be pretty cool too. And also, someone said Hellhounds was already taken. Oh, dang. Well, that one isn't an option. I mean, Hellhounds sounds pretty cool if we're working on that. Man, I'm trying to think of one at that point. Honestly, Wolves Gaming is pretty decent. But you can always come up with something like, think of something wolf related, like their strength or something like that, and you kind of try and make a name that's influenced off of that if you want it to be like more creative or like a little bit more abstract. So, you know, or you could call, like Molson has a great idea. You could call it Fangs, or let's see here. Someone said Patrick Barnett said Wolfgang L. That's actually a pretty good one. So those would be really cool, honestly. Also, Elka PME said Lupus Major. Actually, that's a really interesting one too. Like you could do that, or you could try and make it Latin. You could try and find like the Canis Lupus. Well, that sounds a little bit too technical. That would kind of lose the edge. I don't know, but like I would say that's not a bad idea though, not a bad idea at all. But a big thanks to you for support, Cyber Sniper, and helping this channel to keep it running. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And I hope that the folks here in the LSA are giving some interesting recommendations because I'm definitely seeing some pretty decent ones. But with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, folks, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news that we have for the night, and we still have some to go. Moving us on down into Venezuela, we have been able to hear the following statement from the United States. At my direction, the United States Southern Command delivered a swift and lethal kinetic strike to successfully execute Nino Guerrero, the infamous leader of the Tren de Aragua, one of the most bloodthirsty terrorist organizations on the planet. Before I returned to office, the former president, yada yada yada, I pledged to expel, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Early in my administration, I delivered on my promise to designate 10 Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization to deport thousands of evil criminals. Yeah, 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 yeah. This action was coordinated closely with our friends in Venezuela, with whom we are working very well. As a result, Tren de Aragua terrorists no longer have safe haven in Venezuela or anywhere else, and under my leadership, we'll find these vicious murderers and drug lords anytime, any place, and send them to the depths of hell where they belong. We were able to see the video that Southcom did put out of the strike, apparently on the building that held the cartel leader, Nino Guerrero, which we can see in this clip right here. And there it is.
Oh, what was that? A hellfire or something?
Oh, I don't think so. It doesn't have the longer shape of a hellfire, and also the explosive was large. I don't know what that is, but actually it slipped right under the roof before it exploded. See that right there?
Yeah. Also, by the way, this dude was hanging out in a pretty like shack-looking structure here, like out in the middle of nowhere. It looks like.
Man, honestly, man, he was hanging out somewhere that didn't really look that nice. I mean, like there's like a kiddie pool back here. There's like a shack here and some garbage over there, and this roof doesn't really look like it's the best kept. And the drone blew it all away though, so I don't think we'll be able to talk about the style points around here any longer. But it does appear that the facility was completely destroyed, and with it the cartel leader. So we were able to hear that. Outside of that, this might have an impact on Tren de Aragua. It might not. I generally have a feeling that it probably won't, because, to be entirely honest with y'all, the killing of El Mencho up in Mexico really didn't do a lot to the Jalisco New Generation cartel, at least in their ferocity or their amount of manpower. It just removed the top guy and they replaced him immediately. So I would say that it's probably going to have a little bit of an impact possibly on the cartel, maybe on its operational capabilities, but I don't really know how much more of an impact it's going to have. Still nice to hear that they were able to take out a cartel leader, but I don't know if the impact's going to be that great.
Yeah, I'll say it's very interesting, like on another side note, that apparently the Venezuelan government is now allowing the U.S. to conduct these airstrikes, obviously, on Venezuelan territory. That's quite interesting. So the U.S. just sent in, apparently, fighter jets, or I don't know if this came from a drone. It's possible maybe it came from a drone, possibly, but they just sent this straight over Venezuelan territory, launched a missile at this fella here that was in the cartel, apparently, took him out, and then just flew out of Venezuela. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it is pretty wild, honestly. Pretty crazy stuff right there. But moving us on out of that bit of news inside of Venezuela, it's now time for us to move on into the middle of the East. And like yesterday, folks, we are going to cover this as quickly as we can because there's not really a lot to elaborate on here. It just is what it is, so we're just going to cover it for what it is and move on. Moving us on into the Middle East, we did get to hear earlier in the morning that the president was not happy. The terms that Iran leaked out to the fake news have nothing to do with the terms that we agreed to in writing. What they said, including their weak and pathetic statement on having a deal, bears no relation to the truth. Very dishonorable people to deal with. With them, there is no such thing as dealing in good faith. Amazing. Also, their totally rebuffed drone attack last night against Indian ships leaving the Ormuz Strait is totally unacceptable. They better get their act together, and fast. Then, not long afterwards, we were able to hear that the United States was apparently starting to speak about military plans and contingency plans to try and secure Iran's enriched uranium if a nuclear deal is reached. The preliminary plan would include the Department of Energy specialists, supported by U.S. troops and other agencies, locating, securing, and transporting Iran's nuclear materials. Officials stressed that no operation had been approved and the discussions are a part of routine military planning. In the meantime, we then were able to hear, after that, some other interesting developments from the Iranian side. For one, they stated that the nuclear demands are completely unacceptable, and they're not agreeing to squat when it comes to nuclear weaponry or enriching uranium. They also then added that apparently Iran and Oman, at least according to the Iranian foreign minister, take this for what you will, are going to be issuing a joint statement regarding the Strait of Hormuz. The management of the strait will not be like before, and then according to Abbas Araghchi, our sword will always be hanging over the Strait of Hormuz, and whenever necessary, the Iranian armed forces will intervene, and Iran will not charge tolls in the Strait of Hormuz, but will collect service fees, aka tolls, but another wordage for them. We then also were able to hear additionally that the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi went on to Iranian state television, which looks to me like some sort of like Indian clickbait news channel. I've never seen Iranian news in real time, but this is bad.
Yeah, really, it's too much crap going on. Like you can't, your eyes can't even focus on 7 different video feeds and also all that writing on the screen. That's way too much.
So we have a whole essay down at the bottom of the screen, and then we have 6 different clips on and 3 on both sides. And then here in the middle, you actually got Abbas Araghchi, and then the background appears to be Tehran, which is also incredibly distracting as well. But in the midst of this whole little,
can you imagine the average Iranian who like doesn't have hardly like much technology access for the most part? It's very much censored. They get on their television and then they're just a sensory overload, just nonstop information. Like this is more than even Americans get with our TikTok brains. They can't handle it.
Man, people in America be talking about, man, you know, like TikTok might be overstimulating people. Meanwhile, on Iranian TV, bang, 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 everyone's like, oh my God, they got everything going on screen. It's way overstimulating.
Yeah, I would say.
Man, but outside of that, though, for the foreign minister Araghchi stated basically that the 14-point memorandum of understanding is near finalization. By the way, the 14-point memorandum of understanding is basically saying that we understand that these are the points that we're talking about, but we don't have to agree on any of them. It's just that these are the 14 points of discussion. That's all that the memorandum of understanding is, by the way. So it's not a peace deal. It's just saying, okay, we agree these are the 14 points of discussion, but we don't have to agree to them. So they could say, okay, these are all 14 points of discussion, and we signed that. And then right afterwards go, we don't agree to any of them. And that's probably what's going to be happening. But then Abbas Araghchi said in a direct quote, we set in motion a process that is now drawing close to its end. The result is a 14-point memorandum of understanding. It has not yet been signed, and until the very last moment, things may still shift. Once it is done, I will come and explain every point to the people. Which doesn't mean anything at all, by the way. Like, I have to make this clear as many times as I can. A memorandum of understanding means absolutely nothing. It's not even a peace deal. It's just saying that this is the stuff that we're going to talk about possibly making a peace deal, and we agree that these are the only 14 points we're talking about. And after that, they can still disagree on everything. So this means absolutely nothing. We also were then able to hear that the Iranians added on later today that control of the Strait of Hormuz rests with Iran and Oman, and there is no international waterway there. He said that Iran and Oman have provided security and operational services to vessels for years free of charge, but the management of the strait will not return to how it was before the war. Araghchi also added the consultations have been held with Oman, and a joint plan may be announced soon, including future fees for services in the strait, largely adding on to the statement we had already heard prior. We then also heard that the IRGC Navy fired upon vessels that attempted to exit the strait without Iran's permission today, showing that they're still attacking vessels within the area. We also were able to hear a little bit further about that as a vessel was hit by an IRGC projectile near to the Strait of Hormuz, showing that they are still attacking commercial ships attempting to pass through right now, so the strait is certainly not open. And then CENTCOM came out later today and said Iran launched multiple one-way attack drones in an attempt to strike commercial ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. forces have downed all of them in recent hours as traffic flow through the strait continues unimpeded. The international trade corridor remains open for transit. This is the strait right now. Skill Issue, or One Guide 2 Weeks, is in there right now, along with Jersey Devil 404.
What the hell are these names, man? Are these the real names, or are they like spoofing them or something?
These are spoofed. They're fake, by the way. Like, these are the only ships in the strait, and they're fake. Like, they've been here for weeks now. Like, I gotta say, it's something else when you look around. Also, we can see right here that the Rasul Allah is also down here as a cargo ship, and we can also, it's Iranian, mind you all, as well. And we also are able to see that there are fishing vessels of Iran near to the strait and in it, but there are literally no ships that are not Iranian that are within the area of the Strait of Hormuz. Nobody is willing to enter it because, unlike the U.S.'s claims that the Strait of Hormuz is open and the water's fine, hop right in, it's not. The Iranians are blowing people up when they even get close to actually being inside the strait. So, yeah, you know, it's, in short, a crock of shit. Nothing's changed really here. But a lot of people are also talking about the other developments that happen around the area. There was an explosion near the Strait today. We don't know what that was or why it happened. Nobody stated really anything about it, either the Iranians or the United States. And the Iranians also showed off this really interesting display of firepower at Karg Island to show that they have minefields on the island. And to show off that they had minefields on the island, they did this.
Oh my God.
I gotta say, man, this is such a display of firepower. To show off how many mines they had on the beach, they blew up all of the mines they had on the beach.
Yeah, really, this is horrifying right here. It's fire on the beach.
Oh my God. Man, man, meanwhile, the U.S. amphibious landing teams, they just cleared all the mines. Move in. Like, man, and they started landing on the beach. Wow. This is like magical. Wow, that's so cool.
Were they trying to make a beat out of it, or was that just unintentional?
I think it might have been unintentional, actually. It looked like it happened right around here too, on this part of the beach, possibly, but I'm not entirely sure.
That's really scary. I'd say that's really scary. Like, you know, I would just hate to have to go up against the Iranians and their explosions on the beach. That's just like the U.S. like never heard of like just, you know, simply parachuting down like beyond the beach. Like, we don't necessarily have to go in amphibiously. They could just like, you know, airdrop the people from parachute. I mean, I don't think the mines are going to take care of that.
Damn, like, you know, man, they're going to be blown away when they see a helicopter. Apparently never heard of that one before. Or for, you know, another example, a Miklik, which is a mine clearer. I guess they never heard of that one either. Or the fact that they can be launched amphibiously. Oh my God. Like, also, it's kind of stupid to blow up all of the mines that you already had pre-laid on the beach to make a statement. It's like, what if we were planning on invading, like, within hours of that happening? There were no mines on the beach at that point. They blew all of them up. So we could have just landed on an empty beach with no mines on it for the larger part. Kind of stupid, really. But anyways, outside of that whole Iranian flexing of the muscles that happened up in Karg Island, a lot of people right now are talking about the statements by Iran and U.S. officials that a deal is in the final stages, and the terms are still unclear. Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so for once, Iran was on the same page as U.S. officials. They said, "Oh, look, the deal's getting finalized. It's like right around the corner." But the final terms are a little bit unclear. But after Iran said that, then the president came out of the woodwork and said, "That's not true. Those bastards better get their act together. That's not true." So apparently, Iran made up some terms that the U.S. hadn't talked about. So I guess Iran's trolling. I guess they came out and did a little bit of that trolling. You know, they like to do a little trolling, kind of like the U.S. president kind of likes to do from time to time. But what do you think about this? What's going on? 56% said a deal is never happening, while 31% said the U.S. is likely giving in to Iran, and 7% said Iran is likely giving in to the United States. And I'm with the 56%. I don't think a deal is ever happening. Also, by the way, there was an allegation that maybe the UAE was turning over, like, I think billions of dollars to Iran or something like that. The UAE is denying that. They're saying they haven't done it, but it was reported by a pretty reputable news outlet. So I'm not sure if maybe the UAE is lying about it or maybe there was a false report. I'm not really sure what's up with that. But Iran's made it very clear that if any deal is signed, they want billions of dollars of their frozen assets back, which basically is going to fund the rebuilding of their regime to a large degree. So I don't think a deal is happening. Me personally, if a deal does happen out of the blue, that means the U.S. basically just surrendered. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say a deal is not happening anytime soon, folks. It's out of the question. A memorandum of understanding is nothing. It's completely pointless. There's no deal coming out of that at all. And we're never going to agree with anything with the Iranians. The Iranians are never going to agree with anything with us. So it's completely pointless, and we're getting absolutely nowhere. And speaking of that UAE news, we did get to hear of that earlier today. That claims had come out that the UAE had agreed to give $10 billion to Iran. Two regional sources told a certain news organization the UAE had agreed to release a total of $10 billion, more than $3 billion of which had already been delivered. The UAE then stated that that was a complete false lie. Like, the UAE has firmly denied reports claiming that funds were transferred from the UAE to Iran, including allegations involving the $3 billion which were allegedly already sent. This statement here that was officially issued by the UAE's Ministry of Foreign Affairs completely stated that that's just not true at all, and they did not do that. I also don't know why the UAE would do that, because why in the world are they the only country out of everybody who would be paying Iran anything? I don't even understand that whole point. But anyways, we also were able to hear additionally that near to the area of Bahrain, satellite photography did confirm that there was damage at the Isa airbase. We can see that little black blip right there on one of the structures. And if we take a closer look at that structure right here, let's take a closer look at it. We can see that that's a building that was under construction at the airbase. So it looks like that's what was hit.
It looks like it got a little smashing. It looks like. Also, I got another post that just came out a minute ago that apparently Soar Atlas also just published high-res satellite imagery from apparently an aircraft strike at Bandar Abbas Airport in Iran as well. It looks like it got banged up.
Man, that thing got banged.
Man, I realized I said that. I'm like, well, that's probably going to be taken by some people as not a savory thing, but it looks like it got a little smashing.
So this is actually near to the civilian part of the airport right there, where this little fuel leak is, like from this hit aircraft that looks to have a destroyed fuselage. But that doesn't look like a military, that doesn't look like a civil aircraft up there. That looks like a military one. So this one was probably also a military aircraft as well that got blown up. I thought they were only going for defensive strikes. What was up with that? Oh, interesting right there. Very, very interesting. And someone's about to say, well, it was defensive because the aircraft was offending. But it's on the ground, though. You can't be doing anything offensive to be destroyed if it's sitting on the runway when it gets blown up, you know. That's a really hard one to argue. But anyways, we also were able to see outside of the Bandar Abbas airport and the Isa airport in Bahrain that a US E-3 Sentry was operating in the air today over Saudi Arabia. We also were able to additionally see as well, hold on to your horses, folks, this is about to get wild, that up in Tehran they had another pro-government rally again today, and they absolutely obliterated my eardrums in the 1 second of audio that we just played.
Let's see this, man. Let's hear the audio too.
Oh, I gotta turn that down. Like, oh my god.
What a trash event.
Also, who in the world's the person out there hitting the little, like, tambourine? Like, that we're hearing? Like, there's just some guy up on the stage, bro. He is getting into that tambourine. Bro, it sounds like they're about to start playing the Thomas the Tank Engine theme song up there, man, honestly.
And what's their score?
It's just another pro-government rally. Basically, they're all just going around and going, man, I love the regime. Like, that's literally the whole point of this thing. That's it.
I think they might be showing up to maybe get a little bit of money, like from showing up or something like that, because they're kind of broke.
Mm-hmm. You know it. Or they've been told you have to show up or you lose your job. If we do roll call and you're not there, you're going to lose your job. This is probably all government officials that are in this rally. Because, that's what they do in Russia. They take all of the government workers and they send them to the Putin rallies and tell them, hold the Russian flags, wave them around, and if you don't show up, you're fired. Don't come to work tomorrow. So this is probably what they're doing in Iran. But let's watch it a little bit more, because honestly, folks, I'm kind of vibing. My brains are leaking out of my ears from how damn bad the music is, and the flags waving around kind of make me a little nauseated, really. But let's keep watching. Maybe it'll get better. Honestly, folks, this sounds like me trying to sing right now.
Man, I tell you, that's a hit. Also, turn that reverb, crank that reverb up, by the way. You gotta try to muffle that horrible singing with some reverb.
Man.
That's how I'll be sounding when I step on a Lego. I'll be sounding like,
Man, meanwhile, just further south at the American 4 PD, wait a minute, someone said Legos! Arrest that man! That's me right there when I, step on a Lego, I go, it's on me! Yeah, I gotta say, we gotta stop this right here. I literally can't take any more of it. I mean, I'm trying to have a blast with this thing and make fun of it, but it's pretty bad. Also, by the way, the serious thing is that, this was a memorial to Salami or something, but it was also a pro-government rally as well. That was, the legitimate reason behind this whole thing. And it also says it right here. In the memory of the commanders Salami and Rashid, I'm not even kidding, they had a commander called Salami that got killed at, the beginning of the whole war. We will not make peace with the vile enemy. So rest in peace to Salami. I also heard that his friend Provolone got wiped out as well at the beginning of the war.
Man, I tell you what, they called him. They didn't call him Genoa Salami. They called him Tehran Salami. That's what they called him. He was a menace in the streets. He was a heavy hitter for the block.
Man, I also heard that I heard that right now, folks, that Baloney's on the run. like they haven't found him, but they're trying to hunt down Baloney and also Rigatoni as well and knock them out because they already got Salami. I got to tell you, folks, that I've never heard a name that dumb in my life of like, what is your name? I am General Salami. If you said that to me, I would bust out laughing. Like I would, like if I was in a serious situation. It's ridiculous. But anyways, moving us on to Tehran, we also got to hear that there were a couple of alerts that did go off in northern Israel today. A Hezbollah drone also crashed near to Arab al-Aramshi in Israel, and we also got a couple of small alerts near to the border area of Hezbollah drone attacks. But outside of that, nothing crazy really happened in this area over the day. So, now that we've finally gotten through all of that stuff that had to deal with the Middle East, thank the Lord it wasn't that long, it's time for us to move on out of all of this and on up and into the Russian Federation and the war in Ukraine. The refinery at Nizhnekamsk is still on fire. It ain't looking too good. I don't know what's up with the backrooms colored buildings here. That's a little interesting, but the fire is still raging, and it doesn't look like there is any sort of an indication that this is going to be going out here soon. It's probably going to be continuing for the next day or two. We can also see the fire here in this clip. No audio, interestingly enough.
Also, by the way, apparently the Iranian bots are coming in here. They're very angry about pastrami and salami getting smoked. Apparently, they're coming in here for blood. Apparently,
man, they said go back to Alabama. like you effing beach you, man. It's like honestly, like that is actually pretty scary. I'd be scared to go back to Alabama. Oh man.
Oh man. Oh man.
Oh no. They're so unhappy. What can we do today to make you happy, sir? Would you like a free deal? You know, watch one stream, get two free? What would you like? What would you like, sir? Let us know. We are here to help. We also were able to see additionally here as well some more footage of what's going on in Nizhnekamsk. Oh my goodness. This isn't from today. This is from yesterday, when the attack happened. A new angle. Archival footage, as we call it. There's the drone. Oh, here. Oh, somebody firing off the cannon.
Ебать, у нас тут боевые действия. Охереть, ебать.
Who the hell is this guy? He gets said bye.
Like, very monotone. He almost sounds he almost sounds Nordic almost. You know how they talk that. It's like it almost sounds like that.
Do you just go E-I-E-I-O? Like, bro, like you went, bro, you know how those Nordic people sound? E-I-E-I-O. It's like, I think that's Midwesterners. Like, honestly, I think that's more of a Midwestern person from, like, Iowa or something. Oh, and there they go. As this guy stands right next to the very flammable fuel truck when the drone could try and hit it. Also, I see a lot of people saying that they love salami. I do too, honestly. Like, the fact that an Iranian general was named after salami is an insult. Oh, thank you, random Russian alcoholic. Anyways.
Блядчик, ебеть, вон еще один.
Oh.
Жопа, жопная.
This inebriated gentleman is one of the truck drivers of Russia. Well, that doesn't really show a lot of confidence in my spirit about getting on Russian roadways. Not that I'd ever get on one.
Yeah, really. I tell you, that's a risky business.
Man.
Сторон хуярит.
Yeah,
Съебываем, короче, с завода. Вон еще один, все уже завод хуярит. Охуеть.
Oh, now it's getting to him. Like he's trying to break in the whole deal. Where the hell is he going? Like, where are they doing? He just did like a whole loop.
I think he's just trying to get away from the explosion.
Well, maybe he is. Maybe he is in here to judge his life, boy. Oh, man, boy. Man, I gotta say, it still stands true that every single like adult male in Russia always sounds like they're blitzed. But moving us on out of that news near Nizhny, it's now time for us to move on down and back into Ukraine, because we've got a lot of news to talk about in Ukraine. Moving us on into our location unknowns, we were able to see a Ukrainian Abrams today. Take a look at this thing.
Oh, wow.
Honestly, the armor modifications actually look kind of cool on this one.
Yeah, it kind of does look pretty cool.
Kind of, sort of. Blee. Moving us on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours as well. And holy moly, another 3!
Dang. I think they're hitting those Bobcats maybe around those bridges that they keep hitting over and over. It could be they're trying to like maybe do some repairs or like fill in some stuff, maybe with some dirt or something like that. Maybe that's what they're up to.
Man, honestly. And over the course of the past 24 hours, Miss DC Keeper of the Records has stated that losses are at or near the 7-day averages. 78 artillery at 2,218 drones ranks as the 18th highest daily losses in both categories. 352 vehicles and fuel tanks is the 16th highest loss, and 8 ground robotic complexes, which are not shown, is still pretty decent as well. And over the course of the past 24 hours, 1,300 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 1 APC, 352 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 78 artillery pieces, 2,218 drones, 2 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. I gotta tell you folks, this is a tough time to be a Bobcat skid steer in the Russian army. Meanwhile, near to the Belgorod area, the Ukrainians were making sure to do some work against the S-400s while that trap beat hit hard, and that Ukrainian drone hit harder. Well, what a wonderful thing to see. They knocked down S-400's radar. Nice! That's actually pretty expensive. Those are like a couple of $100 million. We also were able to see that up near the area of Kupiansk, there was a lot of action over the course of the day, most of it with the drones. The Ukrainian border guard unit, Apex, destroyed a Russian artillery piece in this dugout right here. We can now see the dugout on fire and burning after the attack, meaning that the occupants of this bunker and the artillery piece are worse for wear. Another hit, just to make sure. Well, that's the end of that clip, but a nice day to see for sure. We also get to see that also within this area, the Ukrainian border guards of the Skvala unit were also striking and destroying Russian positions, including trenches, trucks, and dugouts. Believe see this drone smoky, and then it blow up, actually. We also were able to see here, they hit some stretches. They also destroyed the Russian Baba Yaga.
Russia copies everything. Like if Ukraine does a Baba Yaga, Russia's going to copy it. They're going to do the same thing. They must have learned that from China.
You see my next door neighbor, Russia, he's a pain and asshole. I make a Baba Yaga, he make a Baba Yaga. I try to bomb bridge, he try to bomb bridge. I win war, he doesn't. Grand success! I'm moving us on from that down into Kupiansk. We also got to see some Ukrainian soldiers using more FPV drones to take down a Russian flag near to the city of Kupiansk. We can see the Russian flag waving in the wind from the top of this tower right here. Great defense to Ukrainians. They blow it away very soon. We actually see the drone lowering it down onto the antenna. And then trying to drop it off. The Ukrainians are just waiting their time. For when the flag gets planted, they'll just wipe it off the face of the top of the mast.
I wouldn't want to get hit by a drone up there at that height. That looks like it could be a little bit sketch.
Man, honestly, it is kind of high up there. I'm not really a big fan of heights. Well, I see
Also,
that.
by the way, what's this thing there everybody keeps talking about? Everybody's saying something about Paraguay beating, or the U.S. beats Paraguay. Is that soccer or something? Like, everybody keeps talking about this game.
It's football, and it's the World Cup right now. I think that's what it is.
Man, I think everybody's watching that right now. It seems like there's a lot of, like, I see people talking about in the chat, and I'm seeing all kinds of, like, my phone's buzzing nonstop talking about Paraguay got smashed. It's like, what the hell is going on? It's like, I don't follow these sports that much, but it looks like everybody and their dog is talking about it. I mean, I'm even hearing the Golden Retrievers talking about it.
If I remember correctly, the World Cup's being held in America right now, and what's actually pretty wild, Matthew, this is going to be something that you'll think is really neat because we've actually been close to it. The Auburn University Stadium actually held the football match between Argentina and another country, and Argentina beat them. And it was actually held in the Auburn Stadium, which is kind of neat. So I forgot who it is. I think it was like Messi. who was like one of the most famous football players out there in the world right now. He was actually at the Auburn football stadium, so that was kind of neat. But anyways, moving us on out of that neat fact about what's going on with the World Cup, we also were able to see another clip here of Russian forces getting hit within the Kupiansk area by the 41st Mechanized Brigade. Take a look at this little clip. There goes an anti-tank mine right into their dugout. And another one. And perhaps a third. Maybe a third.
Very crude, but it apparently works quite well. Just literally lob a tank mine down there at the target.
Did somebody say crude? We need it. Like, we need it really badly. Oh, they're going off with these anti-tank mines, I tell you. They're really doing good. But moving us on out of the Kupiansk area and further on down and into the Sevastapol forest, we also were additionally able to see the Ukrainians slamming out some drones up there on the battlefield. We see them dropping a net on one, and there it goes into the drink.
Look at that. They got it with the net. That's good. That's pretty good with that, actually.
Look at that. They don't stand a chance. Here goes another one. And, oh, Briac. There it goes. Right into the soup. See, there it goes, down to the ground. I tell you something, folks. I tell you, they's cooking up Russian drones left and right out there in the Sevastapol forest. Really something. We also were able to see in this clip as well, within the Seversk area, that they were also hitting, apparently too spicy to show, some Russian forces. We also were able to see some more Russian forces getting hit by the 19th Army Corps near Kramatorsk. There's a remain of a Khrushchevka that the Russians are hanging out in. Next thing you know, they're going to be hanging out the windows as it goes tumbling to the ground. Take a look at that. Oh. Don't toil my blade. Skipping past that one. We also see this Russian hanging out here. That didn't work out too well for him either, did it? We also see this Russian hanging out here. That didn't work out well in the tall grasses either. The Ukrainians are handing the Russians their asses in the tall grasses. Call me a poet. We can also see them here continuing to hit Russian forces hiding in houses, or at least what's left of them. And I gotta say, folks, the bots are rolling in tonight hot and heavy. I gotta say, something else. And let's see here, moving on from that clip and on into the next one, we also were able to see even more Russian forces. Apparently too spicy as well, getting hit.
Oh, man, they put that little thing up and late. Oh, whoa, man.
Man, they put them up on all of them, man. These weren't bad earlier. I mean, I watched them. I didn't think they were too bad either, but apparently they are. I never knew. But the 36th Brigade was also taking out some Russians near the Konstantinivka area today as well. Man, they sat here and censored all of my clips, man. I got them all, and they were good earlier, and now they're not.
Let me do this real quick. Let me try to shun out the bots real quick. Let me go turn on the subscribers only mode real quick, because we're getting a whole bunch of these fools up in here right now. There we go. Look at that. Little subscribers mode right there. That's like a can of rage spray. Look at that roach. Look at that thing flopping around and flipping and flopping.
Man, look at that. I gotta say, folks, those bots tonight have been crazy. Crazy, I tell you. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also were able to see that within the area of Pokrovsk itself, Pokrovsk City, the 55th Artillery Brigade was also doing its work against Russian forces as well today. They got the tank, bleed. We see that the tank is now cooking nicely. One of the very few they have left. They only have a few hundred of them, actually, throughout the whole of the country. Now we're able to see another little hit in the distance. The cooking of the tank, the charbroiling of Russians. We can also see here the D-30 getting knocked out. And thus, folks, with subscriber-only mode, the chat has been made whole once more. You can also see them continuing to hit the Russian artillery pieces throughout the wider area.
It's crazy the way Ukraine blows up a drone on that target.
it's something that we have to watch, because 96% of all losses for the Russians are by drone forces these days, meaning that it is the most important sort of a thing to watch, to see how well they are doing. Moving us on out of these clips and on down the line and into Zaporizhzhia. We also were able to see north of the area of the Melitopol front that the 123rd TDF was continuing to deliver knockout blows to Russian radio antennas. But we're going to cut this one short because we've seen this again yesterday, and we don't want to see something similar again today. Moving us on down and into the highway near the Berdyansk, we also get to see the Ukrainians flying their drones over the supply routes. There's one of them. It's literally just hanging out. Drinking liquor.
That's got to be. Can you turn down the road noise a little bit? But it's a little bit scary though. If you're just driving down the road and you see like a whole bunch of drones like loitering above it the whole time, that thing could have suddenly dived down on a truck. You never can tell. Also, the Russians are starting to disguise their military transports as civilian vehicles. They're starting to put these wraps over the actual truck itself to make it look like it's a logging truck, like for civilian work and stuff like that.
Man, honestly, they are. We're about to be getting into that here in a minute. Moving us on from that clip and on into the next one, we did get to see that a Russian did film one of these fuel trucks that was disguised as a logging truck.
Красавчик, смотри, как они его, замаскировали. Военный бензовоз, смотри. Вот он. Клоуны.
He got a laugh out of it. Well, the Russian FSB didn't get a laugh out of it. We saw this very same guy later, apparently having to make an apology video.
Oh no. Oh, they got him.
Я, Македонский Сергей Борисович, 12.06.2024
Bro looks a little bruised.
двигаясь по городу Керчь, обогнал военный бензовоз интересной формы. Произвел видеофиксацию.
Oh dang, he's a little bit wet in the mouth.
Съемки сказал.
Oh my God, his crime was calling them military clowns. It wasn't filming the disguised fuel truck, it was calling them military clowns. That's what got him in trouble.
Военные клоуны отослал это видео своему другу за границу. Потом это видео появилось в украинских пабликах.
Man, I'll tell you what, this dude right here, I think he's been through some stuff at this point. He looks like he's got a couple of scratches on the forehead, and also his hair looks like a rat's nest. I think he might have been possibly tossed around a little bit or something.
Man, the FSB, they did a little bit of work on him. Jeez, I have to say, folks, not looking like the freedom of speech is supported in the Russian Federation. And I thought that the people in the U.S. government really knew a good country when they saw him. Tisk, tisk, tisk. It looks like they don't. But moving us on from that and on up into Kyiv, here is the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1,570 of the war. It's finally come around to happening again, folks. We have a speech. So without further ado, Peach!
Peach! Шановні українці, українки, передусім я хочу сьогодні подякувати усім нашим воїнам. Продовжуємо виконувати план далекобійних санкцій України. У ніч на сьогодні були нові українські активні санкції. Є ураження у Самарському регіоні Росії. Це більш ніж 800 кілометрів від нашого державного кордону. Також є ураження ще й нафтового об'єкту на території Татарстану. Україна відповідає цілком справедливо на російську війну. І наші воїни роблять це влучно. Важливо, що досягаємо визначених цілей також і на фронті. Російські штурми не мають давати окупанту тих результатів, які визначає російське політичне керівництво. Це важливо з усіх точок зору. Головне, щоб нарешті ми могли вийти на реальну ефективну дипломатію. Фронт повинен розчаровувати Росію. Це передумова того основного завдання, яке усім нам потрібне – миру для України. Я дякую усім, хто це розуміє, хто захищає наші національні інтереси саме так, як це потрібно. Вчора і сьогодні дуже активний час наших політичних рішень. Вчора провів наради з прем'єр-міністром Юлією Свириденко, міністром оборони України Михайлом Федоровим та міністром фінансів Сергієм Марченком. Головнокомандувач ЗСУ Олександр Сирський та начальник Генштабу Гнатов підтверджують: погоджено шлях збільшити фінансову стійкість нашої оборони і забезпечити подальшу трансформацію української армії. Я вдячний парламентарям, які затвердили зміни для бюджету, щоб посилити нашу оборону. Я вдячний партнерам, які нам допомагають. Перше – виплати. Є ресурс, щоб збільшити виплати в армії мінімум 30 тисяч гривень в тилу. Чим більше саме бойових завдань, тим більше рівень виплат. Будуть нові, відчутно сильніші контракти для піхотинців – 300 тисяч гривень в середньому на першій лінії. Все тримається на українській піхоті, на нашому українському піхотинці. Контракти будуть пропрацьовані так, щоб була чіткість, час контракту 10 місяців, 14, 24 та конкретні умови, тобто чіткі відстрочки, гарантовані терміни і реальні відстрочки. Окрім цього, будуть збільшені виплати для українських бойових командирів, і це має створити позитивний стимул, щоб зберегти досвід управління в армії. Кабінет міністрів затвердить конкретний механізм. І перші нові доплати Кабмін має почати вже в червні. Друге, я вдячний всім добровольцям з інших країн, які б'ються заради нашої свободи в Україні, розуміючи, що це стосується свободи багатьох інших народів. Тут, в Україні, треба захистити право нашого народу жити вільно, що точно допоможе багатьом іншим народам. Я доручив відкрити значно більше можливостей залучати іноземних добровольців в українську армію. І щодо цього буде більше механізмів рекрутингу. Третє. Подальше спрощення переведень для воїнів, більше можливостей зростати в армії, більше позитивних стимулів, щоб приєднатись до оборони. Вже дуже добре показало себе пряме фінансування для бойових бригад. Вже щомісячно працює більш справедливий розподіл особового складу для наших бригад. Вже збільшуємо можливості бригад самостійно проводити БЗВП. Це хороші основи, щоб завдяки збільшенню виплат та новим контрактам вийти на впровадження термінів, конкретних термінів служби. Я розраховую, що кожен елемент змін, які зараз впроваджуються за це літо, покаже свою ефективність. Міністерство оборони представить деталі рішень і обов'язково кожного дня і сьогодні, і наступними днями, будь ласка, звертайте увагу на повітряні тривоги. Ми розуміємо, з ким маємо справу і на що розраховують в Росії. Замість миру вони обирають ракети, жодних інших карт у них немає. Ми маємо розраховувати на свою силу, свою уважність. Обов'язково бережіть життя. Слава Україні!
Героям
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1,570 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of this speech, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I've got to say, folks, it's been an absolute blast, an absolute honor, and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for all of y'all tonight. We were able to see that 14.2 thousand people were here at the peak tonight, and so far, 95,000 people have watched this stream since the start. I always have to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people consider this channel to be their primary source of news and watch it every single day to be able to hear what's going on around the world. And so with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to move on into the question segment, where we're going to be talking to all of the super chatters and as many live chats as we can get. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it's now time to get to our super chats, live chats, and our Morse code decoders of the stream. Right now, there's no more breaking news coming out. Sadly, I don't have any more information about those Neptune missiles that were allegedly lurking around the area of the Kerch Bridge. Haven't heard anything else about that, so it'll probably be tomorrow. That mic will line up perfectly for a video maybe tomorrow. You can't really tell these days. We'll have to see what happens with the Kerch. But in the meantime, though, I wanted to go back because I saw everybody in the chat talking about all these different terminologies for roughing someone up or giving somebody a tune-up, depending on who you ask. I don't know if y'all seen it or not, but there's this fella on the BBC channel called Louis Theroux that did a documentary down in South Africa, and I think he was like talking to some police chief or something like that in South Africa, and he was going around disciplining people that were committing crimes, or at least allegedly committing crimes, and the police chief kept saying over and over like how he was fixing people up. The Louis Theroux guy asked him, he said, well, what happened to this man? Why is this man shivering and shaking and scared to speak? He said, that's because he got the medicine. He got the medicine. And then he said, at another point, beat somebody else apparently, or someone else beat somebody down there in South Africa. They're like, He was cooked nicely. He was cooked nicely. There's all kinds of different terms for giving somebody a little rough up, a tune up, cooked nicely, everything roughed up. I mean, Enforcer, do you have any extra terms we can add to the mix?
Beating the brakes off them. I mean, like that's a pretty good one. Honestly, that's a classic. Let's see. Giving them a bloody nose, knuckle sandwich. Taking them out back, taking them to the woodshed. Roughing them up a little. Gently persuading them. There's a whole bunch of ways to put it.
Man, jumped on, ganged up on. I mean, there's a lot of different things right there. I think the FSB did one of those to that guy. I have a feeling that he might have gotten a bit of a thrashing. There's another one, apparently, before he got put in that interrogation room, then told to read a statement. Clearly, he was not very happy. He appeared to be under duress to a certain degree. But anyways, though, moving on from all that right there and moving into our first super chat, this one goes to none other than Truckin' Chef, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Trucking Chef, for that $20 support as well. He said, I used to live in Alaska, and I flew over this area every time going to work and back. And it never got old seeing the second highest mountain in the world, Denali. And here's the coordinates, and click on that. It's 23,000 feet high.
Denali is really cool, actually. You're absolutely right with that. It's one of the neatest things ever. Here it is, actually. Denali, Mount McKinley. I personally call it Mount McKinley. I remember it was called that when I was a kid, and then they changed it when I was in elementary school, I think in like 2nd or 3rd grade, to Denali. But still, it's really cool. What's crazy about this mountain, folks, is that it is 23,000 feet tall. The tallest mountain here, which is the tallest mountain I've ever really seen, here in Salt Lake, is like Lone Peak, which is one of the ones closest to us, and I think it's like 11,400 feet tall. And this thing is well over twice the size. So Lone Peak would be about right here in height. And then the rest of Lone Peak's above that. Really kind of crazy when you think about that, how tall this mountain is.
People get killed on Denali like all the time. Like I think there was a grizzly bear attack on Denali like not too long ago. This is grizzly territory here. I think there was an attack a while back.
Yeah, I think there was. Like, a lot of people do, this is a fairly dangerous mountain. Crazy enough, the most dangerous mountain in America is in the Appalachians. I think it's called Mount Washington. And I think hundreds of people have died on that one over the years, like 250 people or so. And I think like 60-something have died on Mount McKinley. Kind of wild when you think about that the tallest one isn't necessarily the most dangerous. But still, outside of that, though, I would have to say it is a really neat thing to see. I'd got to say, like, I would love to go to Alaska one day and take the Alaskan Railroad from Anchorage to Fairbanks, because it actually goes right by Mount McKinley. You get to see it right out of the window of the train, and you get to see it for hours.
We have I think 2 viewers that watch the show. They might be here in the live chat tonight. They live off the rail route, because I think it's that railroad that like stops and lets like residents off the train like in random spots to go out to like cabins and stuff like that off the train tracks, or like in the woods or something. And people have houses out there. They just jump off the train, they stop it and let people off.
Yeah, those are called flag stops, actually. Like, they put out, like, a little flag on a tree, like, like a little red cloth, and the train knows to stop there. That's actually something they used to do a lot back in the day, back here in the lower 48, during, I guess you could say the golden age of railroading, during the age of steam. That was very common for people to have flag stop trains along their route and just hop on. And the conductor would calculate their ticket price from where they got on to wherever their stop was going to be, and they could pay on the train. Kind of cool. That they used to do it, but that was on more rural routes. You wouldn't see like express trains and stuff do that. That was like in the middle of kind of like backwoods Alabama, sort of. Like if a train was going somewhere through there and it was like a rural passenger train and you wanted to hop on, you could actually do a flag stop there. Or also that was really common out here in the western United States, where it was less dense population wise, and most of the time back in the day that was the only way to get in and out of the city before automobiles became a common thing. But they still do that in Alaska. I think it's one of the last places. It is the last place in America. I think it's one of the last places in the world where they still do flag stops like that. Really, honestly, when you look at the Alaska Railroad, it operates like it's still the 1940s.
Yeah, it does. Also, I see people talking about how deadly, like Denali is and stuff like that. And there's people talking about, oh, there's other more deadly places to go. Really, honestly, probably the safest mountains or some of the, there's really no like perfectly safe wilderness you can go to. It's always going to be slightly dangerous because of the wildlife and snakes and stuff like that. But, out here in the Wasatch Mountains, like out here in Salt Lake City, like these are some pretty tame mountains out here for the most part. There's mountain lions and stuff like that, but we don't have grizzlies though. We don't have that. So that's my main concern is grizzlies. Those things actually will mess people up and like go after people for real. Not the blackberries; they don't really mess with people that much. They try to be a little skittish for the most part, unless they're food conditioned and they're used to being fed. Then they might get a little bit hangry. But for the most part, it's pretty safe out here though compared to Alaska. I don't think I would go out in Alaska to those mountains and do stuff like I'm doing here in Utah. I don't think I would do that.
It's a little too remote for me. I'm not that confident in like my outdoorsmanship to go to Mount McKinley. I feel like I'd probably die out there. But you know what's even crazier is that there was a mountain in New Hampshire called Mount Washington, and it is right here. 6,600 feet tall, and more people have died on Mount Washington than Denali, and Denali's 23,000 feet tall. 162 people, since record keeping began, have died at the top or near to the top of Mount Washington over the 100 and something years that the record keeping's been going. So there's been more than one death per year on Mount Washington, and Mount McKinley actually has kind of a similar running sort of a death count over records keeping, which started around the same time, and there's been 130 people that died on Mount McKinley and 161 that died on this one mountain, just one random mountain in the middle of the Appalachians.
Interesting. Do you know what the most deadly U.S. national park is, by the way?
The deadliest one.
Then it's like here. All recreation areas and stuff like that.
It's up here somewhere. Like I think it's North Cascades actually.
Nope, it's according to Google, it's the Lake Mead National Recreation Area that allegedly sees the highest total fatalities. They said 317 deaths. Apparently, Nevada and Arizona is where it's at. And drowning is the leading cause of death. So I don't know why is it so dangerous to swim here. Like I wonder why that is.
I wonder. Maybe they got. Well, this is actually where the Hoover Dam is at. Actually, that's what created Lake Mead, which was actually originally supposed to be called, folks, by the way, the Boulder Dam, if y'all didn't know. But because it was made during Hoover's administration, if I'm not mistaken, or it was started under him, it got called the Hoover Dam as like Herbert Hoover's dam. But I believe its official name is still, if I'm not mistaken, the Boulder Dam. But its unofficial name is the one that everyone knows the best. But outside of that, though, maybe they get sucked into the dam. Like maybe they swim to. Well, they don't let people swim close to it. Like never have they let them do that because they get sucked in the turbines and gunk them up and everything. But I don't know. I mean, that's kind of interesting when you think about that. Why in the world are so many people drowning out here?
Also, according to the National Park Service here, they have apparently some mortality data from 2014 to 2019. It says the top 5 recreational activities that causes death in the parks. Apparently, driving's number 1. Apparently, driving the national park's the deadliest. It looks like about 369 people got taken out simply driving. 255 people got taken out while they were on a hike. 186 got taken out while swimming. 122 got taken out while operating a vessel in the water, and 75 people got taken out just walking. So I guess maybe a bad trip or a bad fall or something. I guess apparently 75 people just got taken out by just simply walking in the park. Oh man, also that's bad by the way. But let's see here. Yeah, that's interesting. It looks like the deaths by age range are across the board too. It's pretty much even. 15 to 24 years old getting taken out at the same rate as 55 to 64 year olds.
It's crazy. You know, I had to go pull it up myself. It does appear that at least for national parks, I was right that the North Cascades is the most dangerous. But wildly enough, the recreational areas like put the national parks to shame with how many people are dying in them. Like it's kind of wild, honestly, when you see those kinds of fatality counts. The people die everywhere all the time, folks. I mean, the reality of it is that the roads that y'all drive on to get to work and back every day are deadlier than any national park is, actually. I think it's something like 40,000 people die on the national roadways every year in the United States.
Hell yeah, I don't know what Utah's fatality rate is, but it's dangerous as hell out here. I got out and drove today to go look at something, and it was like the Thunderdome out there on the highway or the interstate, like the pure Thunderdome. I will say this: I like Utah as a state, but the drivers out here have no clue what they're doing. Like all over the place, like running off the road. Like very commonly, people just running their like right side of the tires off the road and like kicking up dust and dirt on the interstates. Like I'm like, I don't know what's up with these people, but I'm like nobody out here pays attention driving in Utah. I will say that they need to go back to driving school out here. I thought Alabama drivers were bad, but Utah drivers are a different breed.
But you know something that's wild about those North Cascades, speaking of like the deadliest national park, is that the North Cascades is extremely rugged and very hostile terrain. Like I'll show you all some pictures of it. That's what the average sort of terrain looks like in the North Cascades almost year round. It's extremely rugged. A lot of people actually, when they're hiking through here, they actually trip and fall to their death. That's actually where most of the deaths come from, is slipping and falling.
Yeah, I can believe that. I'm pretty solid. Like I've got pretty good like built up leg muscles and stuff like that. Probably pretty good with the ankle strength and stuff like that these days. But I'll say coming down off of some of these like higher elevations off these mountains, and you're like stepping on rocks, like coming down off of trails, like coming like 1,000 feet like down in elevation. Like it is so easy to twist your ankle on those rocks, like coming down. Like I did that the other day unintentionally, just like twisted my ankle on a rock coming down. I'm like, dang. I'm like, once you start getting tired, like that's when it starts like getting a very high risk of like twisting an ankle or spraining a leg or something. It can happen.
Man, honestly, man, when you get tired, man, your ankles just seem to like turn into nothing. It's like they don't even exist, like as far as like actually working anymore. They just give out whenever they want to. Like there's not even really any warning to it. Like they just like flip or like sprain themselves almost on their own at that point. But I do have to say, folks, the North Cascades is gorgeous, but extremely dangerous as far as national parks go, especially trying to get around them. There's almost no trails in this national park. So that's kind of an interesting fact about it. But something else I gotta say, folks, that's really interesting to me, at least, about these places like these mountain ranges here in the southern part of the in the lower 48, is that what is wild, is that none of them get the wind speeds that Mount Washington gets. And it's really weird. I don't know the exact scientific explanation that they give as to why this mountain is this way, but you can see it from space. Let me see here. There it is. You could see it from space because there's no trees on the top of it. And Matthew, why do you think there are no trees on the top of this mountain? Take a guess.
Probably because the wind keeps blowing the stuff away that would grow there.
That's right. The winds get so fast on Mount Washington that if you stand up there in some of the strongest windstorms that happen on the top of Mount Washington, you can actually get blown clear off of the mountain and into the air and then fall to your death thousands of feet down because of how strong the wind blows. The strongest recorded winds on the planet were recorded on the top of Mount Washington at a wind speed of 231 miles per hour.
Damn, that's wild work right there, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's
That's
unbelievable.
insane. I've only dealt with winds that's like a fraction of that, and it's pretty serious. Also, by the way, if you want to show people like where I went today to go look at stuff, you haven't seen this either yourself, so you might find it interesting too. I showed the people the picture I just sent you on Discord. I went to the reservoir today to go take a look at it, and you can let people take a look at this.
There
The
it
water's
is.
super blue. Yeah, look at that. I can't see it, but I'll take his word for it. But that's where I went today. I drove to see this reservoir right here because I was kind of curious to what it looked like. Very active water sports. There's that boat right there on the left over there. They were like wakeboarding or something, and they kept throwing these people off over and over. So I sat there for just a minute, like watching these people get thrown off the wakeboard over and over and over. And I was like, dang, like they're going to eventually probably stop that in a minute, but they never really did. But yeah, it was very, very beautiful blue water out there. I think the water looks bluer because like the sand color and that dark green and stuff. It makes it look a lot bluer.
Yeah, I think that is the reason why, that it looks really blue. Something else that's really interesting about the water out here is that all the reservoirs look like that, because they're very strict, folks, about messing with or contaminating water out here. It's actually a crime, I think in the whole state, to mess with water sources. So most people don't touch them, in national parks, national forests, or anything. So the water ends up being exceptionally clean before it's even treated by the water treatment plants and then put into the water supply locally. So you can see all of these really neat little reservoirs. I think the one you went to was this one, wasn't it?
Let me go back and see.
Little Dell
Zoom
Reservoir.
out some. Zoom out some. No, no, I went to that higher one. It's higher up.
This one?
It's that one. Yeah, it's this one right here.
I went to that East Canyon Reservoir. But generally the water is fairly clear around here. Like the ones that I've been to, I've been past this one. We also went past this one. I haven't been by that one in like 6 or 7 months because it's just so far out. But one that I have been by in recent times has been the one down here near Heber City, the Deer Creek Reservoir. And this one actually looks really nice as well. Like the water is very blue in it. Like you see it right there. It's like a loch in Scotland, honestly, like with how the mountains surround it and how it's a long, like thin, finger-shaped lake. I like the look of it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I would agree. It does look pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. It is pretty neat. And also, let me see. I got to show you something here. Like, I think, yeah, I could show it to you. Yeah. Let me show this to y'all here real quick. This trail goes up to the top of Timpanogos Mountain. This one I want to do one day. I just don't know when I'm going to try and do it because this is a bit of a jaunt. You can see, pretty far ways up even to get to here. But it's a beautiful trail on the backside of the Timpanogos Mountain, which is kind of down near American Fork. So we just got to make sure not to mention Legos, and we'll be completely fine. Nothing bad can happen. But I mean, look at this, dude. This literally looks like something out of one of those idealistic, romanticist periods of paintings. When they were making the paintings of the U.S. West, like the U.S. West, like the Rockies and the West Coast and everything.
Yeah.
Looks just like it. It's insane.
It does look pretty nice, I will say. Very beautiful.
I mean, wow. And also the flat-faced cliffs that are on the backside of the mountain. It doesn't look like this from the other side, folks. The other side of the mountain looks very different. Let me see. Maybe there's a picture of it here. Yeah, this is what actually the front side looks like, looking towards Utah Lake here on the west side. So you never get to see the backside of the mountain from where we're at. But whenever you drive around to the other side and you actually get into the national wilderness, you get to see all kinds of amazing things like these mountain goats and also the flat-faced cliffs that make up the backside of the mountain. Really cool stuff. And also, I think the highest point of the mountains in the Wasatch are made of marine limestone. If y'all didn't know, that's also a neat fact about them. But anyways. With that, I hope we've had an interesting rabbit hole about the mountains, and a huge thanks to you for the support, Truck and Chev, in bringing up Denali, aka Mount McKinley, as I call it, because I think that is one of the most impressive mountains, definitely by height, in the whole of the United States. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another one from Truck and Chef, and thank you, Truck and Chef, for the second support. He said, one more thing, Enforcers. Can you tell us about the history of the Alaska Highway going to Alaska, built in World War II, and why it was built?
And let's see here. Let's see. Can you tell us? Yeah, I actually can tell you. So back in the Second World War, when Alaska was largely still isolated from the rest of the United States, the supply situation had been a concern for decades at that point, and they had already tried to deal with that by the federal government funding and building the Alaskan Railroad, which still operates as a federally funded and operated railroad in the present day, which is a really cool fact about it. It's the only one of its type in the whole country. When the Japanese started to invade the Aleutian Islands and the strategic vulnerability supply-wise of Alaska started to become an issue, the U.S. government went out of its way to fund the Alaskan Highway. If I'm not mistaken, the Alaska Highway actually goes through Canada to be able to access Alaska, but this was supposed to be able to circumvent the railroad ferries and all of the shipborne traffic that had to go to Alaska otherwise during the war, which was considered to be under threat from possible Japanese submarine torpedo attacks, which could start to starve Alaska, and the United States could potentially lose Alaska supply-wise if the Japanese started to torpedo these sorts of ships. Crazily and luckily enough, they never did. Japanese submarines really didn't have the range, or they weren't reliable enough to be able to get out there to really attack the commercial ships a great deal that were heading to Alaska. So the Alaskan Highway project was then made, I believe, starting at Fairbanks and going all the way through northern Canada, through Yukon and British Columbia, back down and into the northwestern United States. A really interesting kind of a thing, actually, and it's really interesting nowadays because this plays a very special part in the supply lines that run to Alaska. Shipborne traffic is still conducted, but it's mostly for aggregates and industrial materials. Aircraft ship in the highest priority goods, the ones that are the most perishable, like fruits and whatnot. And then commercial trucks, like 18-wheelers, they're the ones that bring in everything else as far as consumer goods that are not extremely perishable, but they're also not industrial-sized in bulk where it will require a ship. So that's actually why the Alaskan Highway was founded, and also why it still exists and operates to this day. So I hope that does address that incredibly well, Truck and Chef. And with that, we actually have some breaking news coming out right now. So what do we got, Matthew?
Okay, so I've finally gotten an update. And also, by the way, a big shout out to Truck and Chef for that support, by the way. In honor of Truck and Chef, we're going to jump to this breaking news right now. We've heard that apparently the drone activity that was being heard near the Kerch Bridge apparently actually was legitimate. It looks like the Russians have acknowledged it. They're saying that the Temiruk district, which is like right before you get to the bridge on the Russian side, it's on that area. We can look it down the map here in just a second. But they're saying that UAV fallen debris has fallen on the area at the seaport in Temiruk. And I think that might be a spot where some of the Russian ferry boats that take some of these trucks across, like on the ferry instead of the bridge, I think that might be a staging point, maybe for some of those ferry boats, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, to break through all the Russian, nonsense wordage they use, the Ukrainian drones have attacked that seaport. They've attacked Temiruk as a whole, which is literally right at the very beginning of the Kerch Bridge. So Ukraine's very close to hitting it. It looks like they're actually hitting the trucks first and hitting the seaport before they get to the bridge.
Let me pull this up here, Temiruk. They said the Temiruk district, but I want to see where the town is specifically. It's right here. So that's Temiruk, which is on the A289 highway, which heads to the bridge at Kerch. So this was pretty close. It wasn't like right at the foot of the bridge, but it's very close nearby and right around the air defense ring that they've made around the bridge. So very interesting note, and it does confirm that the Ukrainians are apparently hitting something of some strategic value, probably the port of Temiruk within the area, which is really good news to hear, and hopefully we'll be able to see that an attack happens on the Kerch Bridge soon, and Crimea is completely isolated supply-wise from the rest of the Russian Federation. So
I wonder if the Ukrainians purposely did that. Like they probably intended to hit Temiruk the whole time. They probably intended that, but I wonder if they flew them intentionally close to the air defense, the ring around the Kerch Bridge, to see if the air defense was still there or what the Russian response was going to look like. Because they flew them so close to the Kerch Bridge that the Russians closed the Kerch Bridge when this attack was ongoing. So it sounds like they might have been trying to test the air defenses before they hit Temiruk.
Oh, they could have, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. That might be the reason why they did that. Still, it's a very interesting attack and getting very close to hitting the Kerch Bridge. So hopefully we'll hear positive reports of that in the coming days or weeks that they attempt an attack on the bridge, and hopefully it'll be successful and knock it out, hopefully for good. So with that, on that breaking news, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Steve T. And thank you very much, Steve, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. He said, when dating, when do you communicate bad habits or surprise them? I steal bed sheets. I wash bed sheets monthly, ? I classify laundry clean. Passes the sniff test, needs washing. What other habits should be declared? Oh, well, I mean, it depends on how long you want that relationship to last. I guess that's how transparent you should be, I guess. If you have some unfortunate habits, it might be best to save that until later. Maybe by that point, you've sort of proven your worth at that point enough that they'll overlook the bad habits, maybe, possibly. At least that's my theory. That's just my theory, but I'm no expert, by the way. Yeah, you're probably better off taking advice from somebody else. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the best thing to do is tell them up front about anything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Transparency is really important to relationships, and trying to build a relationship on kind of like a misconception or kind of on a bed of lies, and then hoping that telling them that, basically the person they knew was a lie and you're actually this way later, it usually doesn't go that well. So you especially don't want to do that by the time you're married and then be like, oh, by the way, like I got a couple of bodies down in the basement. Like you want to tell that kind of stuff a little bit up front, so that way they can kind of know who you are and, your red flags, your yellow flags, and your green flags, and kind of balance them all out and figure out if it's going to be workable or not. Because generally, really setting up any relationship with a real lack of transparency isn't a good thing. Obviously, don't just start dumping everything on a first date or the third date. Wait for a couple of dates in, and and then be like, oh, by the way, this and that and that, yada yada, bringing up your life story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's best to be fairly transparent and just honest at that that point, like look at yourself from a third person perspective and say, like here's some of my like strengths, here's my weaknesses, faults, and mistakes that I've made, some things that I have troubles with, and hopefully they'll be about as transparent as well. That would be my best kind of relationship advice that I could give. And then there's also a whole bunch of other questions that you have to ask, especially if you start to consider marriage seriously, because you're going to be living with each other. And then you would want to ask things like, like how many times do you clean the house? Do you bring friends over or do you not? Like, what would you be willing to do? What are you not willing to do? Like, as far as like chores around the house, stuff like that. You would like those things sound very small, but they're actually very important, because if you miscommunicate on all of that stuff and they have one completely different expectation and you have a completely different other, you're going to get an explosive sort of an impasse, and that is not going to be ending all too well. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know. And a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one, also, by the way, I think he was joking. He got the whole manual book anyway, but I think he was joking.
Oh, I didn't know it was a joke. I never heard of that one before.
But we also have a $20 support from Agaruso, and thank you very much, Agaruso, for that $20 support. They said, not sure if it was covered just yet, but the U.S. government just forced the AI company out there to take down their AI models with an export restriction order. And also, I did hear some rumor about that maybe the government's putting restrictions on that Mythos like platform that Anthropic came up with, that AI model. I had heard that somewhere. So maybe so. Like they were saying, like at least Anthropic was saying it was extremely powerful to the point where they were concerned about it somewhat. That's at least what they said before. So maybe there's some truth to it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say, I haven't really heard about that a whole lot. I haven't paid attention to the whole AI side of things lately, but I wouldn't doubt that, considering that they've had a falling out with the government. It looks like the government may be trying to get at them now for that reason, possibly. So a big thanks to your support. I hope that has addressed that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Zyper Sniper 1 once again, and thank you very much, Zyper, for the second support of the night. And Zyper said, coffee fun for the Enforcers, and thanks for all the good names, and now I'm on the top 3 best. And if we can get a poll on it, then the LSA can choose the name. It's between Wolf's Gaming, Wolfbane Gaming, and Smoking Snakes Esports.
Smoking Snakes? Them things hitting that hash. Matthew, let's run a poll on that and see what people are thinking about that. Because Zyper Sniper deserves to know what a good name would be, and let the LSA choose. Let them choose what they like. And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you for support, Zyper Sniper, and the coffee fund. And also really cool to hear that you were able to get some good recommendations from the folks in the LSA for a name. That's really neat, actually. And I hope that you actually do pick a name, and that your team in if I'm not mistaken, it was CSGO, I believe, is slated for success. Yeah, it actually is Counter-Strike, so that's CSGO, I believe. So I hope that they're slated for success in the future, and you make it to the big leagues where you're competing for the monies. Everyone's dream back in school, when I was in school, was to actually get into like a professional gaming sort of a thing and win like tournaments and everything. That is a really, really hard thing to do, actually. There's almost like a whole NFL style like selection deal going on in the gaming world these days to get on those teams. But there are teams that do rise, from their humble beginnings into greatness and start winning tournaments like that all the time in a lot of the gaming sports worlds. So I hope that you do get to actually make a team and see them rise to the tournament level at some league. That would be really neat to see. And so a humongous thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And we'll get back to the poll here in just a little bit, Zyper Sniper, to let you know what the folks in the LSA are picking these days. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Star, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Star, as well. They said, unfortunate update, union contract signed, and company is walking back on a bunch of stuff they signed off on. It's at international now. And the moral of the story, screw those companies and corporations. They're not your friend. Honestly, it's very adversarial. Once a company is public and they have a board of directors and stuff like that, everything starts becoming a lot less about taking care of people and starts becoming very numbers-oriented and very unpersonal, to say the least. And then it starts becoming more of like a machine, and you can easily get caught in the machine and ground up in it if you're not careful in some of these organizations. But I'm sorry to hear that, by the way. I hope that they come around. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, that sounds like a time to strike. Like if I ever heard anything, when a union and a company come to some sort of an agreement, and they make basically some sort of a binding agreement, and then they back off, well, the corporation backs off of it, that's the time to strike. Unfortunate for that company.
Strike.
Man, next thing you know, they're going to be called, bring in the Pinkertons. Wait a minute. Like, it's like, wait a minute, this is the 1880s? It's like, oh shit. Yeah, that though, I do have to say, that kind of stuff is really annoying. Hey, and like, I gotta say, like, sometimes unions do take it very far and they end up kind of abusing their collective bargaining power. It does happen. But at the same time, corporations will steamroll people without a second thought and screw everyone over that's working for them if they need to just eke out literally just a couple of extra $1,000 for their shareholders. They will do it. And so that's why I would tell you if it seems to you and you're a union that it seems that it was a square deal and now they're backing out of a square deal, striking is really the only option I suppose that they would have. But then again, that's up to the union at that point to figure that one out. But a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing a reality. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I wish you the best of luck in that whole situation that's happening right there. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to Peter Burrow, also known as Flash One. And thank you very much, Flash, for that $20 support. He said, hello there, enforcers. A little for the bot spray, LOL. And great show you have here, and see you next time.
Hey, and a big thanks to you for the support, and thank you for the bot spray fund. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Also, I think that was Peter Burrow.
Say what?
I think that was Peter Burrow that you just read, or you said Star at the beginning of it. You had me very confused. I was like, I think
no, I didn't say Star. I said Flash One. I said Peter Burrow.
That confused the hell out of me because I was seeing Peter Burrow on the spreadsheet. I was like, who the hell is Flash One? I was like, who is that? I was like, I think he just said Star or something. I was like, I don't know. I was like very confused. But beyond that, thank you so much for enjoying the great show we have here, Flash One, aka Peter Burrow. And also, I gotta say, thank you so much for the bot spray fund, because we love to get rid of them bots. We like to axe them with the ban hammer. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And see, everybody say, I heard Flash One. I know I said it. But our next one here goes to Truck and Chef, who puts in a 20. And thank you once again, Truck and Chef, for I believe that's the third support of the night. He said, seriously, if y'all want to go see Denali, let me know. He said, I can fund it for y'all. DM me. He said, it will change your perspective. And McKinley was an old statement. The native culture is Denali. It's huge.
I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support, and I wish that we could go and see Denali, but sadly, we hardly ever get any time off of this show. Like, it would be very hard to get the time off to be able to fly to Alaska and hang out and go see Denali, but I do thank you for the really kind offer. That is extremely kind of you, and I appreciate that greatly, but sadly, I just don't ever think we would have a lot of time to be able to get off here of the work side of things and take some time to wander around, as much as sometimes I want to, believe me. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for the incredibly kind offer, Truck and Chef. That's great. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
International goes to Truck and Chef once again. And thank you very much, Truck and Chef, for the $20 support and the fourth support. We do appreciate that. He said, also, side note, if y'all want to take a trip somewhere, when you have time, I can fund it if you want. Much love. I'm being serious, too. And also, thank you very much, Truck and Chef, for that support, by the way. Also, sorry for laughing through your super chat as well. Andrew just said something and phrased it really, really roughly. I was trying to not laugh at it, but I'm doing an awful job. But thank you very much, Truck and Chef, for the kind words right there. I would have to echo exactly what Andrew said. Sadly, we have no time to go anywhere, but we do appreciate that kind offer. But Enforcer, what say you?
Sadly, we just don't have the time. We're always busy here. We're always keeping that news running, and sadly, it just gives us almost no time to get away. Hardly any time to even get away from the damn house, which kind of drives me crazy these days, because you just never know. Like with the nuts that are in charge these days, you never know if they're just gonna bomb Iran out of the blue, and so we have to be within like 10 minutes of the house these days, which means we can't really go anywhere at all, even in the city for the larger part, because we don't know what's going to be happening day to day with the current loons that are in charge and what they'll just sporadically decide to do. And I have to say, folks, on that one, if you take that political, I don't care. That's literally talking about our job and how it's changed. And that's literally something that we have to do these days. Back in the day, we could say, oh, we could be like an hour or two away, because if something happens or something looks like it's about to happen, we'll know in time to get back and cover it. Nowadays, we just have no clue. There's no way to even tell. Something could just happen out of the blue. And it gets very mentally exhausting because I'd like to get out and get like wandering around and kind of enjoying something here and there. And nowadays, I can't even do that. I basically just got to sit around the house or just drive down the street to go get something to eat and then drive back. And that's about all I have the time to do, or I can go far enough away to do. So a big thanks to you for the support, though, and for the incredibly kind offer. And with that, we're on the next one.
And moving on to our next one, we also have a 20 from Daniel P. Gon. And thank you very much, Daniel, for the 20 as well. He said, congratulations, Enforcers, on the 600K subscriber milestone. Well deserved. Go LSA and go Team USA men's soccer team.
Hey, and a big thanks to your support and the congratulations on 600,000 subscribers. I gotta say, that's one hell of a number right there. One hell of a number. And we greatly appreciate all of the amazing folks who continue to subscribe to this channel, watch this channel, like the channel, and support the channel. Every single one of y'all make this thing possible. If you're not spending your support here in Super Chats, you're spending your time here. And we're greatly appreciative to all of that, to each and every single one of you. And a big thanks to you for the support, Daniel, to help us to keep this thing running and hopefully see the channel continue to grow. And also a big go to the LSA and a go to the USA in the men's soccer. Let's look at the World Cup right now on Google. Let's look at it, see what it's doing. Oh my God! Wow, yeah. Actually, the Paraguayans got rinsed by the United States. It was 4-1, and in football terms, for European football or international football, that is actually pretty big right there. That's a huge, like, basically Paraguay had no defense, and the United States was just slamming them all day long. I mean, that's something else. Let's see, and then Canada and Bosnia and Herzegovina are tied 1-1. So that's interesting. Doesn't look like Group B, C, Group B, C, or D have gone yet. But the next groups to go up tomorrow are going to be Qatar and Switzerland. That'll be an interesting one. Which basically the two neutral countries, man, like that's actually kind of crazy. The neutral country of the Middle East and the neutral country of Europe are going to be going up against each other in the match tomorrow. Then Haiti and Scotland. I have a feeling that Scotland's going to obliterate Haiti. I just have a feeling there.
I didn't even know Haiti had a team. That's crazy.
Bro, it's going to just be barbecue in the game, bro.
Hell, bro. It's like, how do they have a soccer team? They don't even have a country.
Honestly, man, you're asking questions that we can't even answer. Like, I don't even know how to answer that. But we also got Brazil and Morocco tomorrow, and then Australia and Turkey. Also, let's take a look at all of the match schedules. So then the US already won. Oh, South Korea won against the Czech Republic. Mexico won against South Africa. I don't know what is that a red card? Like, did South Africa do something so badly they just basically forfeited the match to Mexico?
Oh, no.
Huh. Anyways, let's see. Then Bosnia and Herzegovina were tied. Let's see. And then after that, it's going to be Germany and Nicaragua, Netherlands and Japan, Sweden and Tunisia. I'm trying to see if there's any interesting. Iran and New Zealand. Wait a minute, the Iranian team is here in America?
I don't think they were allowed in.
Oh, so, okay. Well, I guess that match is not happening. Let's see here. Iraq and Norway. Like, that's an interesting matchup. Let's see. Argentina and Algeria. Austria and Jordan. And then England and Croatia. Oh, I forgot. Like, the British don't have, like, a British team. It's like the English, the Scottish, and the Welsh. Where in the world are the Welsh, then? Anyways. Let's see. And then Ghana and Panama. Uzbekistan and Colombia. I mean, some of these matchups are kind of wild, honestly. But anyways, really interesting that's happening here in the United States of America. I've seen some people come from around the world and they're kind of dissing on how American life is, and some others are amazed by American life. Like Bucky's, like a couple of the international guests who have come here to the United States to watch the World Cup are blown away by the Bucky's gas stations, actually, which is kind of insane. That's one of the mind-blowing things is how big a Bucky's can get. But anyways, with that, before we move on to the next one, it appears that we finally have enough votes on this poll to give none other than Zyper Sniper the decision on what the gaming group should be called. So, Matthew, what do we got?
It looks like 42% said Wolfbane Gaming, 34% said Smoking Snakes, and 24% said Wolf's Gaming.
Interesting. So it looks like Wolfbane Gaming is the winner. So I hope that you use that name if that's the one you want to use and go to success, go to victory with that name for that competitive team. And so big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Live Animal, and thank you, Live Animal, for the 10. And they said, it looks like the USA is getting ready to impose sanctions on Ukraine. On the other hand, we will hand Iran billions to create a drone-armed Hezbollah. Also, I don't think they're getting ready to do sanctions on Ukraine. I would doubt that. Like, that would be too far even for, the current situation. That would be too far even for that. So I wouldn't think they're going to do sanctions on Ukraine. Now, they might keep lifting the Russian sanctions. That's possible, but I don't think they would sanction Ukraine. If you're saying that because you think the biolabs thing might cause it, I don't think they're going to go anywhere with the biolabs thing, because that is such a goofy point they try to make today. I don't even think they're going to run with that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think they're going to either. So I do thank you incredibly for the support and humble this channel to keep it running, but I don't really think that it's going to be getting to that point where we start throwing sanctions down on Ukraine, because also Ukraine's going to completely withdraw any drone support that they're willing to provide us, and then we're going to be not in the greatest position in the future for that reason. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here support from Otani Sanji, who put in a 10, and thank you very much, Otani, as well, for that support. And he said, yens is how Kazakhstan's critical mineral exports to China, Russia reshaping Central Asia trade amid current events, specifically the C5+1 summit with our reps reshaping U.S. interest, and great stream.
That's very interesting to hear, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, that whole yens thing is quite interesting. They're quite interesting. I'll have to consider that whole deal. Yens. Interesting. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from InExternal1. And thank you very much, InExternal, for that support. The 20 right there. He said, hello from Florida. I love this show. And also, hello to Florida. He said, I show up for the war news and stay for the comedy. And you dudes are rad. And thank you, by the way. He said, random question. Who is your favorite Ninja Turtle?
Why are you saying that like you don't know what that is? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was big when we were kids.
Oh, yeah, okay. You're talking about like the cartoon that was on Cartoon Network? Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never watched that show, really, to be honest. I now that you say that, the Teenage Mutant part, I recognize the name now. I never really watched that as a kid. I watched pretty much everything else, I think, but that. I don't know why. I don't think I ever just, like, caught on to it, really. But he said, take it easy, Rashatos. And sadly, I don't know anything about those Ninja Turtles right there. I do know people that are into that, though. I remember hearing people talking about that. I never knew what they were talking about, though, when they were talking about the Ninja Turtles. I was like, Ninja Turtles? I was like, I've never really heard of this thing right here. But Enforcer, what say you?
And what was your favorite Looney Tunes? Oh, man,
I know Looney Tunes. I watched that. I was into that. I was into that channel. Does anybody know? I don't know if anybody here's gonna know it, because you have to be like from our generation to know it. But that Boomerang channel that was on cable, like I used to watch the hell out of that when I was younger. Like I was watching that Boomerang channel like nonstop. Like every morning it was that Boomerang channel. I watched the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Johnny Quest was another one. Let's see, the Smurfs a little bit. I never saw the Ninja Turtle. I don't think that was on that show or on that channel. I don't think.
Sadly, I never watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles either. I know about them, like Leonardo, Michelangelo, Dante, and I think the other turtle, and then there was Master
Those are
Splinter.
painters, bro.
Well, yeah, but they were all called after that. Like, they were all called after artists. Like, that was their names. And then they had Splinter, who was, like, the rat who would bring them pizza. But I actually don't know a lot about the Ninja Turtles beyond that, actually. Like, I just kind of know that because, like, growing up, folks kind of told me a little bit about what the Ninja Turtles were about. But basically, every single day we woke up, we watched the Jetsons and the Flintstones, and that was basically it. I was more of a fan of the Flintstones than the Jetsons. Because the Jetsons, I just didn't really vibe with the Jetsons, and also I watched that 1,000 times, against my will. Yeah, against my will greatly, because I got to the point I hated the damn Jetsons, because it was the only thing we watched every single morning. But I like the Flintstones a lot better, because they seemed a little bit more relatable to me, like more like normal and kind of down to earth.
I like that original Scooby-Doo series too. I thought
yeah.
that was pretty solid right there. Honestly, that channel just had nonstop gas on that channel. That was actually pretty solid for cartoons. Like I actually went back and watched like a couple of those, like I think like a year ago or something like that, because they were actually on that free like TV show thing, Tubi or whatever. They had the original Scooby Doo on there for a while, and I watched one of them. I was like, these actually aren't that bad. Like even like obviously now I'm not a child anymore, but it's like it's actually not too bad. Like it was actually kind of like simple. It's like simple storylines, not too much thinking required. You just stare at the screen and sort of drool.
I want to find that one where they're like, Zoink Scoop, the key's outside. And then they hop outside and grab the key and then jump back in the building to go
That's
unlock the door.
That's the one where they were chasing down that alien or whatever. At
Yeah,
the
it was the alien in like the diving suit, and he would go around going, and they like run for their lives and stuff in the carnival, like from them. Like, dude, that was
now
a great
the Iranians
episode.
do that.
Remember how they do it? They get up there at those pro-government rallies and go, yeah. It's like, bro, they do this well. But man, I gotta say, like, Scooby-Doo was great. Scooby-Doo, like the Flintstones were really good. Tom and Jerry was always really good. I like the Tom and Jerry episodes because they would just get insane. Like, nothing would make any sense of what they were doing. It would just be nuts.
I love the Pink Panther. I learned all my cruelty from the Pink Panther. Like I remember that one.
Oh, and so Mike C brought up Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest was really good. But let's see here.
And they man, going back and listening to those Johnny Quest episodes today, they wouldn't let that fly today. Like they
Hell
would
no.
not. Like there were some things in that Johnny Quest, like going back and looking at it. I didn't understand when I was younger, obviously, but now I look back at it, I'm like, damn, they weren't holding back in some of those. They were letting loose in some of those cartoons. Like if you did some of that stuff today, they'd cancel your whole Cartoon Network over that.
Man, they literally canceled a series over even one of those jokes. They had to put out an official apology and everything. It'd be wild. I mean, Roadrunner, I didn't really see Roadrunner a lot. Roadrunner was never really shown on Boomerang a whole load.
That was Looney Tunes, Roadrunner, and all that. Roadrunner, that coyote.
Oh yeah, you're right, yeah. So we never really saw that one a whole lot. We never saw the Animaniacs either. Like I know about the Animaniacs because of their like Nation song, which is like famous, but I don't really know a lot about the Animaniacs. I know that they were like pretty off the cuff though. Ren and Stimpy, hell no. Like no, I've seen Ren and Stimpy now. Like after I grew up, hell no, we were never been allowed to watch that when we were growing up. Mr. Rogers, we watched a little bit of Mr. Rogers. I remember that from when I was really little. I always thought Mr. Rogers was pretty cool myself. But let's see here. Oh, geez. Courage the Cowardly Dog. Didn't really see that one a lot either, actually. That one's just like a fever dream show, though. Like the Courage the Cowardly Dog. The few times I ever saw it, it was like this mummy guy, and he was outside. He was like, "The stone, bring me the stone." It was like weird and fever dream looking. Like I never really watched Courage the Cowardly Dog a whole lot growing up, but I will say though, Hanna-Barbera and Boomerang had it going on when we were kids. That was basically all we watched. So sadly, I wouldn't be able to pick a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle because I never saw the show, actually. But if I had to pick one off the top, off the bat, I'd probably pick the one that one of my friends told me a long time ago he picked, which would be Michelangelo. That's probably the one I would pick. But big thanks to your support.
I like those like old Disney ones too. Like you know the one of like the frog and the adventures of Mr. Frog or Mr. Toad or whatever his name was. Like that was pretty good. Also those like Jack and the Beanstalk ones with like Mickey Mouse in it where he's like slicing the bread real thin, talking about actually that was a duck that was doing that. That was Daffy Duck that was doing that. They was like slicing the beans and the bread thin and stuff like that, and the cow was gonna get butchered. I like all those.
I think that was all a part of one series. Let's see. Let me see here. Let me check this. Oh,
was it
man.
Phantasmic or something like that? I think it was like some.
Like, let's see. It was something that came out around that time. Disney Jack and the Beanstalk story. It's a part
I can't get that image out of my head of them slicing that bread thin. Like that's stuck with me my entire life. Like them slicing those beans and that bread thin. Like I've never forgotten about that. Like I've carried that with me. I've always been paranoid about having to cut bread that thin.
Fun and Fancy Free. That's what it was. It was the collection series, like that. It was basically like short stories made into a movie, basically that they put together. And this was kind of like a World War II and post-war sort of a thing that they did during the Second World War and right after it a little bit, is that they take a whole bunch of shorter stories or they make shorter films, because most of their animating department and everything was put towards the war effort, and they would make shorter films on the side, and some of those are probably some of the most memorable ones that ever came out. But this was one of them, fun and fancy free. I remember, man, they had like the whole like live action part of it. You remember, man, like they would be like fun and fancy free, and then like bring it on to like the guy, and you'd be like, oh well, we got a great story, and then they like go to the animation. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember all that stuff right there. I also remember the ones they did that was like, dang, it just slipped my head or slipped my mind just right now. I was trying to think. It was a Disney one. It was one of those older ones. I can't remember. Like, it just slipped my mind right now. Dang it, I can't remember it.
Oh, dude, you remember Bongo?
Yeah, I do remember that. That was that little like rat looking thing.
No, that was the bear. Like, no, that was the bear.
Oh,
Remember, I think he was the one who would ride around on the unicycle and stuff, and then he went out in the woods, and he hated the woods, and then I think he ended up,
oh
going
yeah,
back
yeah.
to the...
Well, I was gonna say the grasshopper and the ants one. I forgot what series that was from the Disney stuff. You remember those like little short films, like the ones about the life lessons? They had the grasshopper. It was like, please let me in, and the ants were like trying to like let him in. They gave him like a hot like tub of water or something like that for the beak and stuff.
Let's see, the grass... that was made in 1934. This is actually pre-war, actually. Let me see here. So, that one... I ain't
Yeah,
going
that's
with
right.
it. Bro, that one was a good one. That was actually
There
pretty
is
good,
the
too.
hot tub of water for the beak and everything like that I was talking about right there. It's all that stuff, and that's literally it. Also, by the way, why'd the ants in this thing right here? Why'd they look like mini Mickey Mouse ants or something like that? They have the face of Mickey or like the Animaniacs or something.
Ease of animation. It was like a business thing. Like, kind of like reusing assets on a video game. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, I think so. But these were classic right here. I thought these were fantastic. Like if I ever have kids today, I'm going to let them watch this old stuff right here, and not that new garbage they're putting out.
But man, let me see here. There's a lot of other ones that they used to make back then. Honestly, Pinocchio was a really good movie. Like I like Pleasure Island, but the law. Like I love that movie. That was a good one. And also Stromboli. Man, honestly, dude, Pinocchio was like goated. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was really good too. What were some others of the classics like they made in the interwar period that were really, really good like
You
that?
remember that one, Home on the Range, that they made? It was like a more modern one. I can't remember. I think that might have been in the 2000s they made that one.
I don't sing, I yodel. And yodeling is an art. Is it that one?
Pull that up. Pull that up real quick. Home on the Range. See when that was made. Like I don't even know when it was
Like the
made,
90s,
honestly.
I believe. Let me see.
Yeah, check
here.
that out. Also, all the Pixar, the old Pixar is all classics, by the way.
Oh my
Like, they
god,
made
it was
history
made
with
in
Toy Story, too.
2004?
Let's see here.
Whoa.
Was it?
Yeah, 2004.
Dang, like I knew it was a 2000s or something like that. Yeah, I remember this right here. That was an interesting film right there. These are all kind of interesting, really. Like I like these older ones.
Man, I liked like the little like sidekicks that like the rancher guy, like the evil rancher guy had. How they always talk in that funny way. Like I always thought that was like a kick, honestly. Like, and also you had like the hot branding iron, that you would heat up and you like put in people's faces to threaten them and stuff. Man, like honestly, that was a pretty good movie. But that one part where they had like the psychedelic dance sequence where the cows were like marching around, that was one weird part, I would say. Like that's kind of like that part in Dumbo where the clowns got drunk and then like Dumbo drank the like the literal bucket of alcohol that they had sitting out, and then he got blasted. You remember that part of that movie where there's like the pink elephants and all that?
Yeah, I do remember all that stuff right there. I definitely remember that.
Nightmare inducing as a kid, man. Like that was nightmare inducing. Let me see if I can go pull up like the Dumbo pink elephants thing, because like
Also,
I'm sure y'all
also
remember
by
that.
the way, Also, by the way, real quick shout out, by the way, because I used his tweet earlier, by the way, to go over the Crimean Bridge stuff. Big shout out to Brendan Punked Ukraine, by the way, because we showed his tweet earlier about the Crimean Bridge. And I see he just posted on Twitter saying, wait a minute, I recognize that tweet. And he was showing it off the stream right now. So he must be watching. So huge shout out to you, by the way. Also, a big shout out for being a good source, by the way, because you're the only person I see reporting that Crimea news right now about the bridge. You're the only source I see reporting that. That's why I used the post, by the way. So big shout out to you.
Yeah, like a big shout out to you. Like a huge thanks to you for being a reliable source that we can also count on to get live news out while it's coming out. So a humongous thanks to you for that. And also really cool to know that you're watching. We're really honored that you enjoy the show and watch it. And also on top of that, like getting back to the pink elephants thing, y'all have got to remember the pink elephants deal. Like this whole deal, that was psychedelic, honestly.
Honestly, I was. I didn't like this, honestly.
Man, honestly though, Dumbo was not a bad movie. Not really my favorite from like the pre-war movies, but it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't horrific. It's just I wouldn't count it as like S tier. Like I would say the S tier would be Snow White and also Pinocchio. Pinocchio to me was probably one like was the best one. But anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Chef Danny B. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for that $50 support and being the official chef of the LSA. And we do appreciate it. Very generous 50. That is the second largest one of the night. He said, "Good evening, enforcers. Chef Danny here. And what's the point bombing somewhere else before we finish the war that we're already in? And LLT, LSA."
As far as bombing the Trende Aragua guy in Venezuela, probably just an easy win, so that way they can go, see, it's not all going so bad. You know, that's probably the reason why, because, I mean, the reality is that they probably know where all of these cartel leaders are every day of the week down there. It's just that right now they're like, oh, things aren't going well. Let's bomb them, you know, let's hope it goes good. And, you know, and then they did, and then they get to say, look, we got them, you know, and make it sound like things are going well. And kind of distract that Iran, there is no deal coming around there. I think that's the reason why they did that, Chef Danny B. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Before we move on to the next one, man, I gotta bring up something. That I just remembered, man. It's not a show or anything. Let's see. Let's see. Wait. Let me see if this will pull it up. I gotta find this, man. I gotta find this. Do you remember those little, like, wind-up toy things that they would do for the intermission where they'd, like, be bebopping around on, like, that white background? And you hear that music, they'd be like, we'll be right back on Cartoon Network. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, I remember that. That was Boomerang, though.
Oh, yeah, you're watching Boomerang on Cartoon Network, and then they cut to the ad break. Dude, I remember that vividly. I also remember that other one, though, with, like, I don't know what it was. It was that horse with that guitar, you know, it was like that little intermission, and he would go up against the bandit guy in the train and, like, slam the train with the guitar and destroy it. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that one, but I do remember the one where it's like, I got a gorilla for sale. I got a gorilla for sale.
Oh, yeah. Got a gorilla for sale.
Take
Got a
them,
gorilla
buy
for
them,
sale.
try them, take them, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it was something like that. That got stuck in my head like a little bit because I listened to it so much. Like, it'll always come on during the commercials and drive me bonkers.
Oh, my God, dude. Oh, Yogi Bear.
Yeah, I remember that too. I didn't care for Yogi Bear too much.
Yogi Bear was kind of lame, honestly. Like, it was just, hey, babu. Like, that was his whole stick. Like, that was every episode was just, hey, babu. And then, like, they try and get some food and they never succeed. Like, it's like, you know, they kind of got old after a while, you know, honestly. But, man, that gorilla for sale thing just reminded me of that because for some reason it was, like, almost always before the Yogi the Bear episodes. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have here a $20 support from Truckin' Chef yet again. And thank you very much, Truckin' Chef, for the 20 once more. We do appreciate all that support tonight.
Hey.
He said, sorry to bother again. And also, you're not bothering, by the way. He said, in the past 6 months, how far has the Ukrainians advanced in the front line? Per city, maybe. And have they taken selected cities? And y'all know Ren and Stimpy.
You know, we do know Ren and Stimpy. I think the best way that I remember him is, I know I haven't never watched him growing up, and I haven't really watched him as I'm an adult and everything. But I do remember this one thing though, this meme. It's of the guy when he gets up out of bed, and people have memeified the hell out of that thing. I think you know what I'm talking about, Matthew. But it's a really funny meme. Honestly, I'll have to go and pull it up here in a second. But also to answer the other part of the question, the Ukrainians really haven't taken any major cities in the past several months. They've taken some open farm fields in the south, like about 100 square kilometers of them, and they've held off the cities that the Russians have tried to push into. But outside of that, they haven't really taken any major cities, and as far as frontline changes, the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back. It's just not a whole load. So I hope that does address that part the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support. And now, let me go and get that, let's see, Ren and Stimpy guy waking up meme. Let me go get that here really quickly. Oh, it's this one. Oh, this one kills me. Every time I see it pop up, I get a huge hoot. I die laughing at this meme. Because people put such good captions on them, you know?
feel like that every morning I wake up. Like even when I'm about to have a good day, I feel like that.
Man, honestly, man, waking up gets rougher the older you get. Like, man, back in the day, folks, when I was in like high school, I literally, as soon as the alarm would sound, I would be able to throw the sheets off, hop right out of bed, and get up and get going. Now it takes me like a good 15 minutes or 10 minutes to do that. Like, it's like you just got to sit there and just realize that you've waken up another day. It's another day. It's not the last one. You got to get up. You got to get to it, and then you get up. It's just not as quick and easy as it used to be even just a few years ago. It's not like I'm that old either, but I guess it gets harder with each passing year. Appreciate your youth when you have it. And like, I'm gonna turn into one of those adults, man. Like, you're like, man, when you walk by a kid, man, I remember as a kid, like all of the adults would be like, "Don't let the flame die out. Enjoy your youth while you have it." And then you would never understand why they'd say that. And then, it takes 10 minutes to wake up now. So, very different sort of a world. But anyways, with that, man, this is how I look when I wake up and I hear that a peace deal is only hours away for the 40th time.
Man, honestly.
Man, real. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory, and thank you, Game Theory, as well, for the support. He said, the U.S. just pulled that Mythos thing, the AI, for national security. Life's over. I think we should be okay. We should be okay. I think it's just an export thing, though. I think you can still access it on, like, the Anthropic platform if you get on there, I think. I never subscribed to it, though. I think you got to pay, like, the $20 a month to get access to it, the Fable version. The Mythos, I don't think they ever released that full version. They said it's too powerful. But unfortunately, what say you?
I feel like that was a whole marketing shtick on, it's too powerful.
I don't think so.
No, well, I think
it was the real deal personally. There's some AI researchers that say that artificial general intelligence has already been achieved as of like a couple of weeks ago.
Huh. That's interesting. It's also concerning. But beyond that, though, I do thank you for the support. Sadly, I just don't get involved deeply in the AI side of things. I try and keep out of it, so I wouldn't really know a lot about all that whole deal. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
Also, I see some people saying you cannot access it. They pulled it. I'll have to check that because I checked yesterday and they had it on there. Maybe they pulled it today, possibly over that little situation with the U.S. government. Maybe that's kind of interesting. If they put it out there and they pulled it, then I would say that's definitely not marketing right there. That means the U.S. government's so concerned about it they didn't want it out there whatsoever. So I see some people saying it is a marketing gimmick, and some people are saying it's not. So it looks like people are very split on that.
Man, in China, please give us access to U.S. mainframe. No, I cannot. Please. Okay, here's how to access U.S. mainframe, bro. Like, it's like something like that. And they're like, okay, we gotta pull it.
I got something worse than that. I heard a story yesterday. I'm not sure if it's true, but I heard a rumor floating around that some people are using. You know how like the Chipotle app. You don't get Chipotle on the app. I don't think so. You probably don't know. But if you go to the Chipotle app and you have like a problem with your order, there's like a chat bot on the app that's called like Pepper or something like that, where you go and tell. Like I've had to do it like once or twice. So I'll forget like the chips or something like that out of the bag. I'll have to go be like, hey, you forgot my chips, and it just gives you the chips. But that chat bot though is like some type of. It's apparently pretty advanced from the sounds of it. Some people found a way to like use it to start doing compute for them. So some people were using the Chipotle chat bot allegedly to like compute like computer problems, and they were like somehow getting around the barriers like that it hadn't installed on it and stuff like that, and they were using it and basically hijacking the compute power off of it, at least allegedly. Allegedly, of course. Bro, that's the rumor out there.
Hello, I'm Pepper. How can I help you? Mine Bitcoin. It's like, it's like, bro, we're putting this AI to good use. That's crazy. I never heard that story before. But man,
here's an article. Here's an article on Gizmodo. It looks like that says a developer went viral for reconfiguring Chipotle's customer support bot into a coding assistant. So the name of the headline is, "Should you hijack a corporate AI chatbot for free tokens?" So it sounds to me like it was maybe more than a rumor. It might have been someone actually did that right there. So apparently they did some funny business like prompt injection or something, and they got it to bypass the safeguards. And then they started using the Chipotle chatbot to start doing like apparently coding or something.
Dude, that's actually insane, honestly. Like, that's nuts. But with that interesting fact out of the way, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar. He said, Ukraine has the coolest name for dire wolves, Liatovsky. It literally translates to fury wolves.
Liatovsky. Man, he said Liatovsky. Bro, that's a last name. Like, bro, that's a Russian last. Bro, we got Ivan Liatovsky up here. But beyond that, I do have to say a big thanks to your support, Ulf Hednar, and that is really cool, actually. Fury Wolves. They have something similar to that in Wales and Scotland, actually, too, in the Celtic languages. Their names for wolves and whatnot. Very interesting. Funnily enough, our last name is actually a Welsh variation of the wolf deal. Like, it's things like wolf cub or something like that is what it originally was in Welsh, and then it got Anglicanized, and now it is what it is today. But anyways, a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I just got on the Anthropic app and tried to click on Fable 5, and it says currently unavailable. So it does appear to be pulled. And also, Miss Disa just sent me a link to Anthropic's Twitter page here showing that apparently they did pull it. They're saying it's suspending access by any foreign national, whether inside or outside the United States. So that's actually a pretty big deal, actually, right there. Apparently, they're that concerned about it that they pulled it. But moving into our next one here, this one is going to go to Truck and Chef, who put in yet another support, by the way, a 10. And he said 590R Chisel shotgun and thoughts. Oh wait, that looks pretty cool. I like that. That looks tactical.
Man, it can be, I guess, pump or mag fed. That's pretty cool.
Oh wow, yeah, I like that one actually. I've never seen that. It does look pretty good though. I actually kind of like that one. Is that a Mossberg?
Yeah, it's a Mossberg. Yeah.
Damn, the only Mossberg I've ever seen in real life was like a kind of a sketchy looking one, but this one looks pretty good.
I think what you mean by that is the Mossberg 500. Is that what you're saying? Is sketch looking this one?
No, I'm talking about the one, the pistol grip, the sawed-off.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, I might have seen one of those somewhere. I can't remember exactly where I saw it, but I might have seen one of those somewhere.
Honestly, man, that thing looks busted. Also, I don't know, like, when in the world someone would be thinking to have one of those, because it's like, you can't even really use that, because there's no stock.
You can use it. It's just like, you know, if you're not careful, you'll throw your shoulder out of alignment.
Have you ever shot a 12 gauge before?
No, but I've seen people shoot them, and I've seen people throw their shoulders out of alignment.
Man, that's not true. You can't throw your shoulder out of alignment with a 12 gauge. I mean, especially when all the recoil is going to your wrist and your hand. Like, you know, like, no, you can't do that. Like, I fired a shotgun one-handed before, like a 12 gauge, and that's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like, I would say the recoil is like a 44 Magnum probably, but it's not too bad.
I don't really go for shotguns really. Like, I just don't do them.
I do them. I do them, and they're good. I actually like the Mossberg 500 because the heat shield on top reminds me of those old 1897 trench guns, which I have a deep adoration for. Let me show y'all one of these. I think it was a neat design. Like, it's a World War I, World War II sort of a shotgun. Pretty old these days, and not a lot of them work anymore, but they're really cool looking, and I like that heat shield they had. I thought that was neat. But I do have to say, though, that Mossberg 590R Chisel, now that thing looks pretty cool. I'll actually have to say, for style points, that is really neat. And I like 12 gauges, too. So I would say that's an A-tier one right there. So a humongous thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
Also, I see people talking about, come on, Bama boys never shot the 12 gauge. Andrew has. I haven't. Like, I'm just not a shotgun person, me personally. I'm just not a huge fan of it. Also, I see people talking about how loud they are and stuff like that. I've like, I don't know if this was done on purpose or not, but I was outside one time, and somebody was handling a 5.56 AR next to me, and they weren't very familiar with how to use it. And they fired off a round without my hearing protection on, like right next to my head. And it went off, and I like lost my hearing for like a solid 20 minutes, like from that. So like, I know loud like is very loud. Also, by the way, probably the loudest gun I've ever heard so far. Some old dude was in an indoor range in Montgomery, Alabama, and he was shooting his freaking hand cannon off. I think it might have been like a 44 or something like that. I think. Some huge revolver. Thing was so loud. It was literally like throwing out fireballs like out of the front of it. And it was so loud in that indoor range, like even through the hearing protection, it was like rattling my skull, like from that. I think you were there.
I think I was there for that. Yeah, honestly, man, like, people would bring, like, I remember Birmingham was really where it was really rough in this one range. Dude, there would be people bringing Dracos in and stuff, like, and it would be so damn loud. It would be unbelievably loud. it would shake the whole building and stuff. So I decided, folks, that I was going to up them one, and I would bring like a 44 Magnum to the pistol range, and I would just do it. I would honestly just do it to throw people off. Like I would like get in there, and it would be like, you know, the little 9mm pop, 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 and then I go in there, boom, like, and it would shake the whole building, and you'd hear everybody slow down their shooting at their targets because of the 44 Magnum. I always used to get a kick out of that. But outside of that, though, I fired something insane. I'm trying to find.
Wait a minute. Ace in the live chat got it. It was a SIG 500 revolver. I remember it now because I think the fella might have been talking to somebody near him or something like that, and I heard him say the 500. I think it was that one. Have you seen that, by the way, the 500?
I'm trying to find something. I've shot this thing that shot something Kasul. I forgot like the caliber for it, but that's the biggest thing I ever shot. I think it's bigger than that one. But let me go pull up. Let's see. What is it again? It's the 500.
It's the 500 revolver. Yeah, 500 revolver. That's a huge round. I don't know if it's bigger than a 44. Like, I'm not familiar with the revolvers like that, but it's a huge one.
I've shot this thing before, actually. These things are mental. I actually shot this thing, and it was the something. I think none other than Bob got it. It's the 460 Magnum, but mine, like the 454 Kasul. That's what it is. Let me go type that in. Man, you're about to get blown away by this 454 Kasul. And let me see. It was a revolver that I shot, if I remember it right. Oh, where in the world? These are not the ones. It was this one right here.
Damn, that thing's serious right there. I'm just not a fan of these right here. I'm not a fan of I'm not a fan of guns. Like me personally, like I know people be like, oh, that's being a wuss. I like my guns to be like I'm not afraid to handle them whatsoever. Like I have zero hesitation about using it. For me, 9mm, I have zero hesitation about. 5.56, zero hesitation. Even 300 black, I'm fine with that too. And a rifle, or actually like a AR pistol actually. But I don't want to mess with guns that I'm like, I'm like a little bit sketched out like handling it, because to me that's just like I'm just not a fan of like messing with huge recoil pistols and stuff like that.
I'm a huge fan of heavy recoil. I carry around in my, like, kind of as like not a daily carry sort of a thing, but I carry around a Anaconda 44 Magnum most of the time because I like it. Like, it's just like I like it and I'm confident with it. I'm pretty accurate with it too. I'm not really good at pistols, by the way, so when I mean accurate, it's going to be like probably for most people like intermediate levels of accuracy. I'm not like a pro or anything at it. I'm very good with rifles, but I'm not at all good with any pistols. But I do carry this thing around because I think it's nice. And I also like to carry around another one that's really cool. It's the complete opposite end though. 1903 pocket hammerless pistol from Colt. I also carry this thing around as well, which shoots 32 ACP, which is about as small as the rounds get, really. Like, you know,
little pea shooter is what they call this thing right here. They call that a pea shooter. But the minimum round I carry is 9mm, and also like I'm better. Like I could do larger calibers. I want to get a 10mm so that way I can carry it with me when I'm going like backpacking and stuff like that, in case a bear jumps out and it's a little bit aggressive or something like that, or it's like a mother bear that wants to attack. I want to get a 10mm. The only problem is the 10mm, like pistol prices are going through the roof. Like even for a basic one, it's like almost $1,000 just for a basic 10mm for the most part. So I was like, I don't know. I might just have to chance it with the bear. I might just chance it with the bear spray, maybe. But I don't like the little too small ones though, like the little pea shooters right there. I don't like those too small ones.
Honestly, I think they're nice though, because I mean, they're small, and they're easy to carry around. I mean, that thing is tiny, folks. And I mean, 32 AC, people are always going to go, oh, it's a 32 ACP. If you're in a self-defense situation, here's my question. Is the human body designed to take a bullet? No. So it's like that's kind of like my premise behind it. It's like, obviously, like it's not going to stop a elephant or anything like that, but it's self-defense, and that kind of fills the category. And I don't really expect to be in those sorts of situations either. So, it generally is just more so for portability, is in my opinion. But I do put the 44 Magnum in the car because that's, if anything extremely bad happened, then I have that. But I like the large caliber stuff generally. Like, I would say that probably the favorite rifle that I have, and I'm on this to this day, is the Remington 1903. ancient design. Like, this thing is over 100 years old design-wise. But it fires the 30-06 round. It has a 5-round capacity. And I can drive tacks with this thing at 600 yards. Well, not 600 yards, at 300 yards with iron sights. I'm very confident in it. Really like it a lot. It's accurate. The bolt action is super smooth. It's a Cadillac of bolt actions. Really enjoy the thing. If we're talking seriously, though, if we're going for like a large caliber like that, I would probably go for an FN FAL, one of these down here at the bottom. Those are also pretty good as well. But I'm generally one for heavier calibers, and I'm pretty decently experienced with them as well, because I never strayed away from heavy calibers. I wanted to try out everything to see what I liked, and I like the heavy calibers. Like, you know, they got good kick, they're enjoyable to shoot at the target range, and also they got quite a lot of power behind them, so I liked them for that reason.
I'll say the one like heavy recoil rifle I've ever shot that I kind of liked was the Scar. I can't remember which type of Scar it was, but it was the one that shot 308. And
Scar
a viewer
heavy.
here on the channel, yeah, a viewer here on the channel. I'm not sure if he wants me to name that he's the one that had it, but he let us fire this one right here. Yeah, the Scar heavy. That one, this was actually pretty nice. Like, I kind of liked it. This one shook the ground like when you shot it. Like it was putting the pounding down on the ground when you fired this one. I like that one, but I just don't like a whole bunch of recoil, especially in like a pistol. Like I just don't like that. But for the rifle though, you got the butt stock and all that, so you can kind of absorb it a little bit. But this one was pretty cool.
Well, you know, like my kind of idea with the 44 Magnum kind of on a self-defense level is that it's, you know, part power and part psychological. Like, you know, if it sounds like you're unleashing thunder somewhere, that's going to have a pretty big psychological effect, and hopefully, even if you missed, they'll just run off at that point because they're not wanting to go up against, you know, someone who's basically carrying the equivalent of a hand cannon. You know, I would, like, I'll tell you this. I'm pretty accurate with it, so it's not missing. But it's still, at the same time, it's a pretty good part psychological as well. And, you know, and they always say that fighting is half the battle. When they talk about fighting battle, the other half is, you know, getting into the mind of your opponent. And so, you know, as far as that thing would go, if you ever had to be in a self-defense scenario, I think it'd be, you know, part psychological and part the power of it. But you got to be confident with it, though. I mean, you know, if you can't handle a 44 Magnum, then you shouldn't carry it, because, you know, if it's a good psychological effect and you can't hit the broadside of a barn with it, what's the point of carrying it? I only carry it because I know I'm accurate with it, and I've fired hundreds of rounds through mine to be able to feel confident enough with it, to where I'm not like, oh, you know, like, I don't know if I can handle it. I know I can handle it because I've dealt with it a lot. Honestly, folks, anybody can handle it. I mean, as long as you don't have like the smallest of wrists, where it's like a 5-inch circumference wrist, I think anybody could handle a 44 Magnum.
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that personally. I don't think these guns are for everybody. Like I could probably shoot this gun. I've got pretty good wrist strength. I just wouldn't want to, but I could probably shoot if I wanted to just fine. But it's not for everybody. Like I've seen people try to shoot these right here, and they'll limp wrist it, and then the blowback will like pop them right in the face. Like the muzzle will pop up and bust their nose and stuff like that. So no, I wouldn't mess with these unless you're comfortable with it.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm. But you gotta have a stiff wrist for this sort of a thing. You know, you can't limp wrist a 44 Magnum. Well, you can't really limp wrist any gun. If you're doing that, then you have bad form, especially for something like that. I mean, like when I fire this thing, I have to have a specific form where you fire it and the recoil kind of kicks it upwards a little bit and to the side, so that way your thumb can reach it easier, because I fire the thing single action. You pull the hammer back while you're bringing it back down, which is a very easy thing to do, and then you're back on your line of sight again. Like that's how I do it, and I'm pretty accurate with that. Like I can get off like 6 rounds in 6 seconds, well, less than 6 seconds that way, and they're very accurate. I mean, you know, at like 15 yards, it's like a 4-inch grouping or so. So that's not bad, you know, especially if you're in that kind of a situation, like, you know, self-defense sort of a situation like we're talking about. So, you know, I'd say as long as you don't have anything going on that's too bad, 44 Magnum isn't bad in my opinion, but, you know, to each their own. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from DJW, and thank you very much, DJW, for the $10 support. He said, FYI, I've been in IT a long while, and when they say something is too dangerous, it's 100% marketing, fear marketing. We're nowhere near AGI either, and IPOs are coming soon, and their financials are very poor, they say. I would have to disagree with you, DJW. I actually know some people that are in the field, like generally speaking. I don't know them super well, but just hearing what they stated about it, I think AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, is a lot closer than people think. I think it might already be here. Actually, it's very possible it is already here, and they simply haven't really made a big deal about it. So I think it's more than marketing, me personally. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, in my opinion, it kind of is because, a lot of people, like, that's something they do in the car industry. This thing's got so much horsepower, you can't handle it. It's going to be the demon of the roads, and they're trying to get people to buy it because everyone always wants to, push the limits or try something that's pushing the limits. And I like, to a degree, I think it's probably true, but it's also probably marketing as well. And then also on top of that, with the government giving them that sort of announcement, I mean, they did just have a whole entire deal go down in between them and the government a while ago. And, I wouldn't say that it's a retaliation, but it might be. So, that could also be something else to consider as well, is that they're just trying to impede the normal conducting of business because that company didn't go along with what the government wanted, possibly. So, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Justin, who put in a 5 and said, welcome.
Hey, and a big thanks to you for support, Justin. A big welcome to you. I hope you've been enjoying it tonight. And a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mr. Fa, who said, what if the, oh Lord, no, we can't read this one. But thank you very much for that $5 support, though. We do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from C146, who said, excuse me, Smoke Salami, I can't talk to you for a second. I'm from the American Federation of Variety Artists.
I think I'm understanding the reference on that one. It's a movie reference, if I'm not mistaken. And a big thanks to you for support and throwing in a really good one there. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Game Theory once again, and a huge shout to you, Game Theory, for the support. He said Claude Opus 4.8 can 100% can do 100% of my work as a CPA, and all I do is tell it to do X, and then it completes emails to the client, and jobs going away. I review, but it's scary good. I'll say, like, I've used Claude Opus 4.8. I like the normal Claude. I think it's Sonnet. I think it is the normal one, like the base model. Like, I like that. Opus is like a smart ass. Like, I've used that one before. That thing is like starts fighting back. Like, I didn't like Opus 4.8 at all. I thought it was garbage, honestly. I think a lot of other people thought that. I'm glad it's working for you though. But for me, I was like, what the hell is wrong with this thing? It's actually like it's telling me it wouldn't do stuff, and it was telling me blah blah blah. I was like, what the hell's going on with this one? This is not at all what I want out of this thing. But unfortunately, what say you?
I have to say, generally, I hate to say this every time the AI thing comes up because I know it's a big vogue thing these days. I really just don't touch AI with a 10-foot barge pole at all. I just don't like them, and also I don't want to be someone who's using AI because I say here on air, folks, and I believe in kind of like following what I preach, and I'm on air and I say AI is bad. I don't like AI. It's taking away people's jobs. So I'd be damned if I'm going to be someone using AI because then I'm facilitating those companies making some form of income off of however they generate revenue by allowing the public to use AI, and then that's going to continue to see that more data centers are built, that more jobs are replaced, and so I generally refuse to use it for that line of reasoning. But outside of that, though, that is pretty interesting to hear that it can pretty much do your job without you having to do anything. That's really interesting, actually. I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to NYC Bicyclist, who put in a 5 and said, Hudson Line on Metro North has flag stops at Breakneck Ridge and Appalachian Trail Stop on Harlem Line.
Oh, you're right. Oh, damn it, you are right. Yeah, actually, you are. And I think if I'm not mistaken, there's actually some flag stops in West Virginia around the ghost town of Thurmond, if I'm not mistaken, as well. I think I just said that wrong, actually, but you are right on that. And the Hudson Line does. Let me go pull that up. The Hudson Line of Metro North. Why did it give me the option? It said Hudson Line Metro North. They said, yeah. Oh, we can't find that. Oh, that's stupid. That's stupid as hell. Let me go pull it up. Let's see. Hudson Line Metro North. The Metropolitan Transit Authority. Let's see here. The Metro North line. This is the green line right here. So, and then there's the Metro North Hudson line that goes further on up the Hudson River. Very interesting. Actually, thank you for sharing that. And I actually didn't remember that, but I remember reading that somewhere very vaguely. Once you brought that up, I was like, oh yeah, I'm absolutely wrong on that. That actually is true. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running and reminding me of something I completely forgot about, which you're absolutely right on. So the Alaska Railroad is not the only one that does flag stop left in the United States. There are a couple of others. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, real quick, let's check this out. Igor Gherkin's Twitter account just posted a picture apparently showing one of the bridges connecting Crimea with the Ukrainian occupied territories. It appears to be a bridge. It shows a bridge destroyed next to another bridge that's been destroyed, and it also shows what appears to be a temporary pontoon bridge next to it. Wait, have we seen this already, or is this new?
Oh, that's not from Crimea. That's that's like the front lines, because this came out from the 7th Corps of the 81st Air Mobile Brigade, and that is, I believe they're right now around the area of Pokrovsk, the 7th Corps is, so I don't think that's from Crimea.
Huh, they were making it seem like it's from Crimea. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, like, it doesn't look like this post has anything around it that would suggest it's from Crimea. It just has eyeballs on it. And it shows this picture.
It was in a line of posts from Gherkin that was talking about Crimea, and then this one popped up with it.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, though, is that there isn't any bridges around Crimea that would look like that, because there's no roadway to this thing. This is in the middle of, like, a dirt field, and I don't believe the 7th Corps would be conducting an action that far behind the lines. This is probably closer to Pokrovsk, considering that, if I'm not mistaken, the 7th Corps is around there right now.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to get more confirmation. For whatever reason, Igor Gherkin didn't put out like a post, like a description with it. He just put out this picture and just put the eyeball emoji with it, which is kind of vague. If we'd have done that, we would have people in the comments talking about what a vague posting king or something like that. But anyways,
yeah, actually, I had to check this. Real quick. The 7th Corps is at the Pokrovsk front right now, and the 81st Air Mobile Brigade, which is attached to them, is also there as well. So apparently this is some river near to the city of Pokrovsk, but it's nowhere close to Crimea, because the 7th Corps doesn't have those sorts of long-range strike capabilities. That's mostly within the autonomous drone forces, which is a totally separate branch.
Huh, well, that is interesting. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Go-Kart, who puts in a 5. And Go-Kart said, LSA.
And a big thanks to you for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And also another big shout out to Truck and Chef who threw in a 5. He said, exactly, Enforcer. I've drove that Alaskan highway several times, and I appreciate the history.
And a big thanks to you for support, Truck and Chef. And I'm happy that I was able to get that right off the belt, because I was trying to remember the story behind it, and I was trying to belt out, like, the basic, like, broader statements about the highway. I don't know the intricate details of it, but it is a very interesting one and a critical part of the Alaskan supply chain. And also, Alaska runs at the fringes of a supply chain. Like, if there's any supply disruptions, they're felt almost immediately. Because I think most areas here in the lower 48, if the supply lines completely were severed to an area, the distribution hubs near to that region have enough supplies to keep the stores stocked for, like, I think it's 8 weeks. Up in Alaska, they run on a paper-thin margin of 2 weeks. So if any supply disruptions happen and they last for longer than 2 weeks, there's an instant shortage at the supermarkets and the stores for most every type of good 2 weeks out, which is a crazy sort of a thing about how they run the supply chain up there. But with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory yet again. He said they did pull it, and Anthropic posted that it was foreign residents were banned, even their own employees, so they shut it down. And that appears to be the case, because I tried to get on there a second ago and it said unavailable from the looks of it. But thank you once again, Game Theory, for that support. We also have a 5 from Game Theory yet again, who said you two should do Skeet or Trap. It'll be the most fun you've ever had.
I've done that loads of times. Skeet and trap is fun, super fun. I love it and enjoy it greatly. I need to find a skeet and a trap range around here somewhere in Salt Lake, because I would love to do that some more, because that is truly the funnest kind of shooting that you can do out of target shooting of any type, because it's a moving target. You have to lead it. You have to be able to fire off the one shot right. And I got really good at it back in Alabama back in the day. I was just absolutely going to town with that sort of stuff. But a huge thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here a 2 from Parbake Potato, and thank you very much, Parbake Potato, for that $2 support. He said, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukrainian, Rom Slava. And a big thanks to you once again. And we're on the next one.
Man, I was laughing as I turned around. I turned around in my chair as I heard something tapping behind me. I was like, "What the hell is that tapping?" I turned around and I have a new plant that I put in my house. I put like this tall like lemon lime palm plant in my house to like decorate the wall. And I turned around and looked, and it had the same silhouette as a person standing there, like right next to the hallway. And I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Bro, I almost jumped up and jumped on the floor just then when I saw that. I almost lost it." But anyway, so jumping into our next one, this one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Plazoth, for that $2 support and also helped to keep the channel running. We also have a 2 from Patrick Barnett, and he said, "You guys are awesome. Best ever, and LLT, LSA."
And long live the Lee Spring Army, and a big thanks to both of y'all, Plazoth and Patrick Barnett, for supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from C146, who said Blade Runner reference.
Oh, I was thinking it was a reference to a movie like that. I'm glad to know that I kind of got the vague idea of it. So a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from John Kelly, and thank you, by the way. He said, "Cheers, mates," and LSA.
And I gotta say, a big cheers to you as well, John Kelly, baby, and LSA, and a big thanks to you once again. Man, someone put it. George Titcher said plant almost got ventilated.
I'm going to have to move that plant, by the way. I didn't realize that until tonight. That plant's in a very bad spot because when I turn around to look, if I hear some noise or something behind me or something like that, immediately, what's in my immediate line of sight is that plant sitting right there, looking like a person, like doing like the mean mugging pose, like looking at me sitting in my chair. So I got to move that plant. But yeah, the plant right there almost got an extra dose of CO2.
They about to call Enforcer Matt the lumberjack the way he about to chop down a tree.
Honestly, I tell you what, I just got it too. I can't hurt it. I just gave it some water today and everything like that. I can't hurt my new plant.
Man, it is actually pretty good looking, folks. He sent me a picture of it in the pot. It actually is a really neat looking little tree. He's actually got a lot of plants in his place. I don't have any. I just have couches that look at a blank wall because I cannot pull it together to actually go out and try and find a media center and a TV because it's just so damn expensive. So I just keep looking at a blank wall when I go lay on the couch downstairs. It's just the stone white wall. And I just stare at that. Well, actually, I'm kidding. I actually get on my phone and I just hang out on my couch downstairs. But outside of that, I have basically no furniture down there still because it's so damn expensive. Have y'all seen how much furniture costs these days? Like everything's like more than like 1.2 grand for anything, unless if it's like IKEA. And I'm probably going to end up getting IKEA because I will not spend $1.3 thousand on a media console. It's ridiculous. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to NYC Bicyclist once again. And thank you very much, NYC Bicyclist, for that $2 support. And with that, folks, we are now out of Super Chat. So a huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel yet again tonight, because it's that viewer support, as we always say, that keeps this channel on the air. And we do appreciate that very, very much. It's now time to say thank you to the live chatters, too, and also the Morse code decoders. Tonight we have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroya, Fluffiness, Coach, Kovateric, Sire, and Brian. They said the Morse code says, when in the course of human events, you get to have a good old time or something in LLT LSA.
And that's a sound of money, and that's dead on the nail, and that was a play on one of JFK's quotes when he said, when in the course of human events, and it was kind of a play on the Declaration of Independence, kind of a good one, but a big shout out to the Lee Springer and Cinema Corps for getting that correct time and time again. Really amazing and incredible stuff right there, and I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you, a huge thanks to y'all for getting that Moscow message correct every single day. Really something amazing right there. And with that, folks, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
You know, it's insane. You mentioned the media center being about $1,000, which appears to be what they cost these days for the most part. I actually looked into it a while ago just out of curiosity. Just 5 years ago when I bought my media center, because I actually lived on my own way before Andrew ever did. So I actually bought some furniture way, way back in the day. My media center, which is a pretty decent one, cost about $400. And I remember at the day, I was like, damn, $400 for a media center. I was like, that's pretty damn steep. That was 5 years ago. Now you're lucky to spend $500 and get a fraction of the media center that I've got right now. You'll be spending double that for like half the size of the one I've got right now. That's how bad the prices have gotten and stuff.
You want to know what happened the last time I went around to look for one of those? I went to this one place. I'm not going to mention the name, but I went to this one furniture store and walked in there, and like one of the sales associates, hey, what are you looking for? I was like, oh, I'm looking for a media center. Oh, of course, right this way. They bring me upstairs. All of them are $1.25 thousand to $1.5 thousand. And I said, ooh, that's kind of pricey. Do y'all have like anything cheaper? oh, what kind of price range are you looking for? I was like, something between like 600 to 1,000, like something like a little bit more affordable than that. Oh yeah, sure. Bring me over to the clearance section. All right, there you go. If you need any help, just, shout out to anyone. And they just walked off. I was like, wait a minute, so y'all aren't even willing to like show anything less than that? It's like, what? Am I a cheapskate because I don't want to get
Was it a
robbed
chain
buying?
store or was it a private store?
It was a chain one. It was the one that, sounds like a remote control car, if you know what I mean. Like, like,
Oh, okay. Well, that's why they walked away, because those places operate off commission. So some salespeople will get rude over that because they're not really getting commission off the clearance stuff, not nearly as much as they would off the big stuff. So that person was just rude.
man, I was sitting there though. I was like, that is wild though. I was like, that is insane. I was like I'm just gonna throw out $1.5 grand on some damn piece of wood to put a TV on top of. It's like, that's ridiculous. It's like shit. Trees don't even cost that much. Have y'all seen like the board foot for lumber? Like the price of that recently? That's nowhere close to making that worth 1.5 thousand. And the fact that they're made in like a Mexican factory somewhere where the workers making like $15 a day. How the hell did they even come up with a price of $1,500? Like, the labor is inexpensive, the materials are inexpensive, the machining is inexpensive, everything about furniture making is inexpensive. Like when you actually look at like the manufacturing process.
The tariffs.
Huh?
Not the tariffs, though.
Oh, Brianna. Like, I just totally forgot. Thank you, Mr. President, you glorious genius. Now I can't get a media center. That's a great one. I completely forgot about that. Are there tariffs on furniture coming in from like Mexico and Vietnam and whatnot? Is that like still in the books or no?
I would imagine so. I don't know specifically, like, if it applies to that, like, off the top of my head, but I would imagine probably it does.
Man, honestly, unreal though, unreal. Random white guy said, "Oh, you're poor. Dumps you at the clearance." Honestly, it's like really that was like so stupid. It's like, because I don't want to get ripped off, I just get thrown at clearance and they just wander off. It's like, honestly, that was unbelievable. I sat there and looked through the clearance. They had like shitty stuff in there too. It wasn't even worth like what. And clearance was 1,000. Like it wasn't even any cheaper than the stuff out on the floor.
Man, I remember when I bought my sofa set. Is when we moved out here to Utah, I had zero furniture. Like I had a mattress and that was it. So I was just like basically like sitting in a lawn chair, like in the living room for a long time. But I finally broke down and got the couch and stuff like that and everything. And when I got it, the lady who was helping was a nice lady, and apparently she liked us and stuff like that. So she gave me an extremely good deal on the little like coffee table, side table, stuff like that. I got like a very nice coffee table from a pretty good store actually, for like $50 for everything, like side tables, coffee table, and all that stuff for like $50. I was like, dang, that's pretty solid. I think it was clearance or something like that, but it looks fantastic for what it was. I was like, damn, huge thanks for hooking me up with that, honestly, because otherwise, if it wouldn't have been for that, I would still be without a coffee table and side tables, because I wouldn't have bought it.
Man, I also sang with with the sales lady, because she said if either one of us sang, he'd get $100 off. Matthew wasn't willing to do that, so I did it for him. I sung "Happy Birthday" and he got $100 off extra as a discount. So man, you better be thankful for that. I saved you $100 on that couch, man. But anyways, with that, we are on to, I believe, the second to last question of the night.
We have two super chats, though. We have a $2 super chat from Sensum, who said, buy a projector with Wi-Fi and apps. It's cheap and portable.
I've been kind of thinking about that, actually. But then in the broad daylight, though, it's like, can you really see that good? Like, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But that honestly would probably be a little bit cheaper. And also, you can kind of get like a little bit of a movie theater experience that way, instead of just watching the TV, maybe. I mean, that's a pretty cool idea, honestly. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from David Ford, who said, my favorite is the incredibly reliable P30.
The P30. The P30 Pistole. Let's see. The H and K. Are you made of money? Like, H and K is expensive. Let's see here. This is the P. Honestly, it looks good though. Like the P30 isn't bad looking.
Oh yeah, I've seen those right there. Those are pretty snappy.
Let me go check the price though off screen. Let me.
Oh, the price is snappy too.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm 18 years. What's the price? It doesn't give it on the H&K website. Let's see. HKP30. Why did this flip the flight radar? That was weird. Let's see. Price. Not in the Philippines. We just want it. Oh, that's not too bad for a pistol. $700 to $850. I mean,
that's expensive for a pistol, man. I think you've gotten out of touch with the prices, man. That's like crazy.
And tell me, how much was your Glock 17 again?
I don't have a Glock 17.
How much was your Glock?
the Glock 43X, I got it for like $400 or something like that, like 450 or something. And that was like, that Glocks aren't like super expensive guns though. I mean, they're just like, everybody mocks them, but that's what that one cost.
Well, don't you have a full-size Glock of some kind?
Yeah, I have a 19X too.
A Glock 19X cost $699. That's $700.
I didn't pay that for it.
Well, nowadays it's $700. I mean, like that's what I'm comparing it to. It's like like maybe back in the day you got like yours for like a hamburger and a song, but nowadays I think $700.
Inflation these days, and also the prices of stuff's gone up so much. Like just a few years back, I was like getting some fantastic deals on stuff. Now everything's gone up crazy.
Man, the last time I went into a gun store in Alabama, I saw a Mosin, and this was legitimately like getting close to the prices they're at these days. A Mosin Nagant rifle, well, not a Mosin Nagant, a Mosin rifle from like the Soviet Union was going for like $600. And I remember the first time I ever got a rifle, which was a Mosin, which was pretty shoddy quality. I got it for $300. I was like, $600 for Soviet surplus Mosins? I was blown away, and that was like basically like the price they're going at these days. It's crazy how much gun prices have been going up recently over the past few years. They've been skyrocketing, like to the moon almost, and how much like even like a junk rifle like a Mosin is these days. But anyways, with that, I hope we've addressed that well. Interesting times here. And with that, we're on the second to last question of the night.
So this one's going to go to from the live chat here. This one is going to go to Votive, who said, how critical are the U.S. weapon stockpiles after all these strikes?
Not all of them are critical. So most of the guided munitions categories, however, like the JASSMs are extremely low, and Tomahawks have been depleted a good bit as well. But in most of the dumb bombs, we have plenty of those. We will probably never run out of dumb bombs in reality. That's one stock we'll probably never actually have to consider. Is it in critical condition? Because there's so many of them, there's no way. And then you just throw a JDAM kit on some of those and generally turn them into a guided ordnance. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to TS Actual, who said, would Putin consider destruction of the Kerch Bridge a threat to the sovereignty of Russia or allow some kind of escalation in attacks?
They might, but I'm not entirely sure, because generally if they made it sound like there was some sort of an existential threat that the Ukrainians were posing to them, that might be the tipping point in Russia for everyone to go, well, what was the point of the war even at that point? If we said we were winning and now we're losing Crimea, what sense is that? I'm not entirely sure, because yes, it could be argued as that easily probably by the Russians, because they consider Crimea to be a part of the Russian Federation, unlike the rest of Ukraine, which they still consider to be occupied territories. So that could actually pose some issues, but I'm not really sure if they'd be willing to follow through on that, because I feel like that would be showing such bad weakness and would be showing the reality of how badly the war has really gone for the Russians, that might start to cause civil unrest in the Russian Federation, to figure out that all of this suffering and all of this loss that everybody in the Russian Federation has sustained for 4 years ended up being for absolutely nothing. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, folks, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. We have had tonight a peak viewership of 14.1 thousand people, and 120,000 people have watched the stream before it ended. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to consider this channel to be your primary source of news, and I hope that y'all will be with us tomorrow when we go live again at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made, I'll be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the almost 120,000 people that joined us tonight. Honestly, I'm surprised about that, because I thought the soccer game was going to eat up all of our viewership, but we actually had a lot of people here tonight once again. But we hope to see you all tomorrow at our usual time at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream, and also maybe for a short war video midday tomorrow. I have a feeling that there probably will be one tomorrow. I have a feeling there will be news coming out midday, but we will see, though. But in the meantime, we'll see you all tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Still lies, обещал.